you don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheap again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 6th part of What If Deku Enters Hazbin Hotel. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of MaxX69 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. After a few hours, the plan was complete, with Izuku planning to present to the residents of the hotel the next day, being a tiny bit anxious for their thoughts on his idea. Then, he got into his bed, turned off the light that the small lamp emitted next to his bed, covered his body with his blanket, and fell asleep, with his shadowy helper changing into his shadow form, thus vanishing from sight and protecting his master in his sleep from anything that could hurt him. On the next morning, around 8 am, as soon as our young Cambion woke up from the realm of dreams, he jumped out of his bed and dressed up as fast as he could, wearing the clothes he had worn the previous day. Then, once he was finished with this, he ate his breakfast, which was jambalaya cooked by his father, that was placed on his table, positioned on a serving tray, and brought inside the room by his aunt. He was asleep. After that, he walked up to the door of his room, grabbed its handle, opened it, and with Shadow by his side, who came out of his hideout at this point, he stepped out of his room and started to go in the direction of the lobby, wanting to know where Princess of Hell was at that moment. A few minutes had passed, and Izuku and his shadowy helper reached the lobby area of the Happy Hotel, earning a glimpse of the situation that was unfolding there. And when he performed this act, he saw that aside from his aunt, his royal friend, and his snake-based demon inventor teacher, everyone was present in the room and were doing their usual tasks, including Kiki, who was laying on the table between the 3 furniture, and Angeldust, who had his pet pig, Fat Nuggets, in his lap and was sitting at the bar counter of the caviar bar, possibly coming to the hotel at late night due to his work regularly taking that long, waiting for Husk to serve the drink he ordered and obtaining a bruise on the right cheek of his, causing Izuku to become worried for him due to him thinking that he must have gone into a fight, not knowing that the gay Pawn Star's injury was inflicted on him by his abusive overlord boss. Seeing that the lobby was not empty, our dear moved his legs and stepped inside while his shadowy friend followed him, causing everyone to notice his presence. Once his father set his eyes on our protagonist, he immediately greeted him and began to walk towards him, curious about how he slept. After Izuku revealed to his demonic parent that he slept well, he inquired from him where Charlie went, making his father tell him that the absence of the Princess of Hell was thanks to her paying a visit to her parents and she probably won't come back until around 4 p.m. Realizing that this was the perfect opportunity for him to discuss his idea about the surprise Christmas holiday for his royal friend to everyone, Izuku asked his father where his aunt and his snake-like sinner teacher were, with the former beings in one of the hallways and sweeping the floor with a broom, and the latter being inside his airship, as his father told to him. He asked everyone to stay in the room and don't stop what they were doing as he ran in the direction of the hallway his aunt was located, confusing everyone with his behavior, with the one exception being his demonic parent, him knowing 100% the cause of his son's attitude. Once he found both of the individuals and requested them to come with him to the lobby, with the wannabe overlord being reluctant about this at first, but joined him anyway after our dear hero accepted his offer of helping him more in the making of the blueprint of the wheeled cannon he was planning to build in the future. He requested everyone to take a set on the 3 furniture, which was the exact thing they did. Then, Izuku walked to a spot where everyone could witness him, and once every single demon in the lobby set his eyes upon him, he revealed his idea of a surprise Christmas party for Charlie and talked about the 2 purposes of this surprise party and the role and the task of each main cast member in this. As he expressed in his plan of making this surprise party, our young overlord thought giving the job of cutting and bringing the pine tree to the hotel to Sirpentious, with his decision being reasoned with the fact that with the help of his minions, the wannabe overlord could be done with this task pretty easily. Izuku also asked his aunt to knit stockings and Christmas sweaters for everyone, and requested his uncle to handle the creation of the eggnog, since he was the bartender of the hotel, thus being the only one in the whole building who could mix drink professionally. For Vaggie and Angel, our protagonist imagined them handling the acquirement of both the Christmas ornaments for the tree and the Christmas decorations for the lobby, granting this task to them in the hope of getting them to become a little bit more friendly to one another, given the fact that they were the cause of most arguments in the rehabilitation center. Finally, as the last part of the preparations, he announced that he and his father were going to make the food for the Christmas dinner, this being mainly due to the fact that most of the food was made and the main chef of the hotel, besides the female cockroach demon, was his demonic parent. As his last request, he asked every demon in the room to wear Christmas-themed clothes as their attire, wishing this for the thought that with this, they could make themselves fit more into the theme of the surprise party. Once he finished the presentation about his plan, every single demon, aside from the radio demon, Niffty, and Husk, just stared at him in dumbfoundedness and in total silence, taken aback by his idea. Of course, this quietness caused our young Cambion to experience anxiety, this being thanks to his assumption that the others disliked his plan. But to his surprise, everyone agreed to go along with his idea, including the snake-like demon and moth-based female sinner, with the former joining this because of the arrangement he made with his pupil about him helping him in the creation of the blueprint and in the building of the wheeled cannon, and with the latter not being fond of this idea, mainly due to the fact that it was thought by the son of the radio demon, but coming along the plan at the end when she acknowledged that all of this was done for her loving girlfriend. After hearing that everyone agreed to do his plan, Izuku adopted a joyful smile, becoming sure that the surprise Christmas party for his royal friend would be held with 100% certainty. And thus, once agreeing on starting their preparations instantly, everyone stood up from their seats, aside from our young overlord of course, and went on their separate ways, with the notable Kingpin slithering back to his airship to gather his egg boy minions, the cockroach-like female demon running back in the direction, the hallway she was previously, desiring for getting her knitting needles and lots of yarn. Vaggie and Angel walking towards the exit of the hotel and stepping out of it after they opened it, beginning their search for any Christmas decoration in the realm of suffering, and the radio-loving overlord going in the direction of the kitchen of the rehabilitation center, with his son and his son's shadow also coming with him as well, with the former intending to lend a hand for his father in the making of the dishes that their future Christmas dinner contained. Everyone handled their tasks without much issue. After 2 hours of searching and with the help of his minions, Sirpentious managed to find, cut, and bring a pine tree that had a perfect size to be a Christmas tree to the hotel, with most of the work being performed by his egg boys. Niffty also succeeded in her mission with ease, knitting beautiful and warm Christmas sweaters for every single individual in the hotel, including her nephew and the Princess of Hell, who was, of course, not present during all of this. In the case of the moth-based female sinner and the gay porn star, they had the hardest objective to accomplish. Aside from the red-colored pentagram that would be in the place of the star on the top of the tree, it took them nearly 4 hours to finally find a few boxes of Christmas decorations thanks to the fact that they were searching for those items in the literal fiery pits of hell. Even after they found the ornaments, they still fought for them against a small group of sinners, with the main for their conflict being that the group leader didn't allow them to have the decorations, just if they paid an insane amount of money for them. Luckily for them, Vaggie and Angel emerged from the fight victoriously, grabbing the boxes and bringing them to the hotel without a hitch, leaving the beaten-up demons in the street. For Husk, his task was the quickest one to be completed. He was done with every step of making the eggnog in almost an hour, thickening the eggnog with egg yolks, folding it with whipped egg whites, adding the milk and the heavy cream to it, everything. Although he really wished for an eggnog containing alcohol, he still had to make a non-alcoholic one due to his nephew not being old enough, which he didn't mind. Speaking of which, our dear hero and his father also had their pretty difficult work to do. In fact, their task was one that took the longest, and it was primarily thanks to the list of dishes they cooked for the dinner. As the main dish, Izuku and Alastor decided to go on the traditional way and chose to fry a whole turkey that they served with lemons, oranges, and limes, acting as decoration, thus making it an exquisite meal. As for the side dishes, they made maple roasted sweet potatoes, peppery roast beef, old-fashioned sweet potato casserole, chopped salad, and the radio demon's favorite, and Izuku's second favorite dish, jambalaya, but without venison, just as our protagonist loved. Heck, Izuku even made special cat and pig food for Kiki and Fat Nuggets to offer them a chance to eat with them together, and even prepared some gingerbreads just like his aunt him how to, with the gingerbreads resembling each resident of the hotel, although he didn't have time to put them into the oven due to how much work he and his father had with the dishes. Once they were done with every meal, they took every dish to one of the dining rooms that were large enough to fit everyone inside and acquired a table that obtained enough chairs and was big enough to allow every single resident to sit down around it comfortably. Then, they set the table for their upcoming Christmas dinner, placing the turkey in the middle of the table and positioning the rest of the meals on the two sides of the dark red wooden furniture, with the maple roasted sweet potatoes, the chopped salad, and the jambalaya being put on the right side, and with the peppery roast beef and the old-fashioned sweet potato casserole getting located on the left side, while Shadow assisted his master and his master's father with his help by putting some dishes on the floor and pouring the food prepared for Kiki and Fat Nuggets into separate feeding bowl. Around 1 p.m., after they were done with this, all three of them left that particular dining room and headed back to the hotel lobby, where they witnessed that by the time they finished their mission, the rest of the main cast, including the pets of the hotel, were already there and had placed down the green-leaved pine tree next to the fireplace, with the sinners of the cast wearing their Christmas-themed attires, waiting for our young overlord and the cannibalistic serial killer to finally arrive and to begin to decorate the tree. Sirpentious was wearing his fingerless gloves, a simple green-colored jacket, and a red-colored bow tie. Beneath the jacket, he acquired a long-sleeved light red shirt, pinstriped with black stripes. His hat's appearance was different, obtaining the shape of a Santa hat with it being charcoal gray and having white fluff and ball, keeping its singular eye and mouth full of sharp yellow-colored teeth at their original location. The few of his minions who were in the room also had Christmas-themed outfits which were similar in style and color, with the exception of their hats, to their boss's clothing, acquiring red shirts under their green coats and having normal, red-colored Santa hats on the top of their shells. Nifty's outfit didn't have much changes from her usual attire. She still obtained her red-colored maid dress and her white apron, but as an addition, and to match the theme of the upcoming surprise Christmas party, she wrapped a black scarf around her neck and added 2 large bows to her outfit, with one on her waist right under her back and having red and white horizontal stripes, and the other being positioned in her hair and also possessing red and yellow horizontal stripes. In the case of Hell's most famous gay porn star, given his job and the style of clothes he favored in these situations, he was obtaining a sexy Christmas outfit, wearing long, white fluffed red gloves, which were black at the hands and acquired the fluff around the wrists and at the beginning of the gloves. On all of his forearms, a red-colored skirt with white fluff at the end, and a short red shirt with white fluff at the breast area where his large fluff was. As the last piece of his attire, he wore a mistletoe in his hair, located above his right eye. The outfit of our dear hero's uncle had the slightest changes. The only 2 differences from his causal clothing were that he also had a mistletoe, just like Angeldust, but it pinned to the left side of his top hat, and got a red and white striped scarf around his neck. As for Vaggie, however, she had the biggest alteration in her outfit. Her bow in her hair was red and green instead of completely red, obtaining vertical stripes with the 2 colors previously mentioned. Her attire was different as well. Instead of her regular clothing, she wore long, black-colored thigh-high stockings and a black mini dress that some places possessed white horizontal stripes at the edge of the top part, at the stomach area, and in the middle of the lower arms, with the most foremost having black dots, the second stripe mentioned acquiring red snowflakes as decoration, and the most latter obtaining red dots. As the last part of her outfit, she had white-colored fluffs around her wrist, matching the attire. Seeing that everyone was wearing their Christmas-themed clothes, Izuku was about to rush back to his room in order to get a Christmas outfit for himself, while Shadow was eager to follow him, but he was quickly stopped in this act by his father, who, with a snap of his fingers, transformed his and son's clothes into new ones, with the radio demon replacing his coat with a black one that had slim red vertical stripes. He also gave this type of coat to his only child as well, although the coloration was a bit different, with the slim stripes being green instead of red, fitting our protagonist's style. Once Izuku got out of his surprised state and thanked his father's kind action, all 3 of them approached the others, joined them, and started to decorate the tree. hanging the stockings above the fireplace and ornamenting the whole lobby with the decorations inside the boxes that the spider-based demon and the moth-like female sinner brought in and placed on the table between the three furnitures. Inside the boxes, they found everything they needed. The lights, the ornaments, the tree skirt, the wreaths, the garlands, every single decoration. And thus they began their work. First decorating the lobby with the wreaths and the garlands, then adorning the Christmas tree with the lights, the ornaments, and the red tree skirt. Alastor even wrapped a few lights around his antlers, which he made larger and wider to perform this task, performing this act on his son due to him asking for it as well, although with just 2 or 3 thanks to Izuku not widening his antlers. At last, at 3 p.m., after they were done with everything, they stepped away from the tree and observed it, with our young Cambion opening his mouth and beginning to speak. "I think we did a good job, didn't we?" Izuku remarked as he looked at the Christmas tree, with everyone, including Vaggie, nodding by using their heads in agreement. But as they did this, the auditory organs of Vagatha picked up the faint sound of something that sounded like a car stopping at the entrance of the hotel, causing her to adopt a certain suspicion that the person whom they planned this Christmas party had earlier. But in order to prove her uncertainty, she decided to walk in the direction of the front doors, making everyone look at her in confusion at her sudden movement. Once she reached the door, she grabbed its handle, pushed it downwards, and unlocked one of the doors slightly, peeking out of the small space she created by this. But the moment she took a look outside, the moth-based female demon shut the door immediately, rushing back to the group to tell them what she saw. "Guys," she exclaimed as she came back to the group, "Charlie's here. She came back earlier," she informed, shocking every with her news. "Quick, Dad, turn off the lights," Izuku requested from his father. "Don't say more, my boy," Alastor answered. Then, with a flick of his hands, he turned all the lights inside the lobby off, causing the room to fall into complete darkness, with the only light source being the light of the outside world shining through the glasses of the front doors. It was a good choice for Izuku to ask his father to turn off the lights, because, at the moment the lobby turned dark, the entrance of the hotel had opened, releasing a low creaking sound in the process. Once unlocked fully, Charlie stepped inside the building with an expression that indicated that she was down in the dumpster emotionally, although the group didn't see this, just heard the sound of her footsteps, thus her getting in the hotel. And she was not alone. Behind her back, the Princess of Hell was followed by her demonic bodyguards, Razzle and Dazzle, who were there due to the promise she told them and followed her everywhere she went, protecting her from anything. After all 3 of them were inside, Princess Charlotte turned around and closed the door completely, letting out a tired sigh while still acquiring her gloomy expression, which she probably obtained due to her father talking about her hotel, her dream, and how hopeless it was, with her guards having a concerned face, worrying for their princess's well-being. Then, Charlie moved her body around and began to walk towards the lobby while crossing her arms and witnessing the floor in sadness, completely unaware of the fact that the room she was going to was as dark as the night. Once she and her bodyguards entered the lobby fully and started to approach the resting area of the lobby, with a snap of his fingers, the cannibalistic serial killer eliminated the darkness, making all the lights light up the room. "Surprise!" every member of the group shouted, gaining Charlie's, Razzle's, and Dazzle's attention and taking them by surprise. "Merry Christmas, Charlie!" they exclaimed in a union. "Wah!" Charlie said in total shock, trying to gather all her thoughts from what she saw. "Gee guys, what is this? What are you doing? Since you never experienced Christmas, and all of us knew how to celebrate it, we decided to prepare a surprise Christmas party for you," Vaggie explained as she and the other members of the group got to the Princess of Hell, with her becoming even more after hearing her girlfriend's explanation. "Wait, really?" Princess Charlotte questioned with confusion. "Indeedy, my dear," the radio demon answered, supporting the moth-based female demon's explanation. "In fact, that's not all. Watch," he declared. Then, he turned his head in the direction of the Christmas tree, raised his right hand, and with a flick of his right hand, he made all the lights on the tree emit their colorful lights, causing everyone to observe the tree with a smile, with the exception of Husk of course, while Charlie just stared at the Christmas tree in awe. She couldn't believe it. Her girlfriend, her friends, everyone did all of this just for the sake of allowing her to experience a holiday she never celebrated in her entire life. And thanks to all of this, Her shock was replaced with gratefulness, and her face adopted a sweet smile as she looked at the Christmas, and droplets of delight appeared in the corner of her eyes. "Thank you, guys," the Princess of Hell remercied happily with a smile as the tears of absolute joy rolled down on both of her cheeks. "You should be thankful for my dear boy, darling," the radio-loving overlord announced, making not only Charlie, but everyone else set their eyes upon Izuku. He was the one who suggested this idea in the first place. "Isn't that right, my boy?" he noted as he witnessed his son with his iconic wide grin. "Well, it's just that, when you told me you had never celebrated Christmas and didn't know what it was, I couldn't help but think about a way I could help you experience it," Izuku clarified to his royal friend as he flattened his ears and tail a tiny bit, and scratched the back of his head with his right hand in shyness. "That's when I had the idea of making a surprise Christmas party for you. And I think, despite all the hardships we had with it, it's still worth it in the end," he said, then continued, "because, with this Christmas party, we also wanted to show you our gratitude for how hard you worked all this time for everyone's sake," he confessed as he looked at Charlie, finishing his speech while everyone, even Husk, agreed with his statement in their minds. "So, what do you say? Do you like it?" he inquired, hoping that his royal friend liked the surprise Christmas party. He didn't need to wait for long. After a few seconds, Princess Charlotte lunged towards our protagonist, embracing him with her big hug of gratitude, causing him to lower his ears and tail and making his face to light up immediately, resulting in Vaggie becoming enraged by seeing this. "I love it," Charlie declared as she hugged her young overlord and her tears continued to go down on her face. "Thank you, Izuku," she remercied, with Izuku's blush vanishing after she said this and him adopting a smile once he heard telling him this. "You're welcome, Charlie," Izuku replied, returning the Princess of Hell's gesture, while everyone just witnessed this wholesome scene, aside from a frustrated Vaggie. Meanwhile, as Alastor observed his son and Charlie exchanging their hug with each other, a sudden idea appeared in his mind. An idea that was not only perfect for the Christmas party, but more importantly, it was also beneficial for his son on a personal level. So, with his plan being complete, he widened his smile a tiny bit and opened his mouth, beginning to speak. "You should have seen his face when he presented his plan to us, my dear," Alastor remarked as Charlie and Izuku released their hug, with the former wiping away her tears and both of them focusing their attention on the radio demon. "He was so enthusiastic about it. In fact, he even prepared to sing a Christmas song for you," he announced, surprising everyone with his statement, with our young Cambion and Princess Charlotte being the most stunned. "Really?" Charlie questioned in excitement as she adopted starry eyes. "I did?" Izuku queried in total confusion, not knowing what his father was talking about until he looked at him and the smile he morphed. By seeing this, our dear hero instantly realized what his father meant by this, causing him to become extremely nervous. Although he was not angry at his father because of his sudden action, knowing that he only did this to let him become less shy about his singing capabilities around other people aside from him, his mother, his aunt, his uncle, Miss Rosie, and Miss Mimsy. But regardless, it still made him very nervous. As he observed his father in worry, the cannibalistic serial killer went on with his speech, continuing to talk to the Princess of Hell. "Indeed, my dear," the radio demon responded. "He was so excited about it that we could barely hold him back," he noted, still obtaining his joyful behavior. "But now, I suppose we should end our conversation and let my dear boy get the stage and perform his song." "Shall we?" he stated, then turned his head in the direction of his only child, walked closer to him, and with his hands, he started to push Izuku gently in front of the whole group, while our protagonist couldn't do anything about it due to the shock that enveloped him. "Papa, quest see quoi tu fais," Izuku whispered anxiously as his father moved him in front of the others while Shadow followed them, with our hero becoming so nervous that he started to speak French without noticing it. "Oh, do not fret, my boy, there's nothing to worry about," Alastor remarked in a whisper, stopping in his tracks and not pushing his son anymore, thus positioning himself in the sights of everyone in the lobby. "Besides, I know you'll get a hang of it. Just stay calm and everything goes smoothly, okay?" "D'accord, papa," Izuku answered, still not sure about this. "Very well," Alastor said, "but do not be afraid, my boy, I have the perfect accompaniment for your serenade," he declared. Then, with a snap of his fingers, he summoned 3 of his shadowy helpers behind Izuku. making him turn around and allowing him to see that every one of the shadows was wielding a different instrument. With one sitting at the drums, one being positioned in front of a piano, and the last one possessing 2 trumpets, with a shadow tossing one of the trumpets to Shadow, which he caught successfully. As he observed the shadows, Izuku understood that his father probably did this for the purpose of making his performance as good as possible, which he appreciated. "And I suppose you'll need this as well," the radio-loving overlord announced, causing the focus of his son's eyesight on him once again and letting him witness that he was holding his red-colored microphone in his right hand, which he extended towards him, thus offering it to him. Thank you, Dad," our dear hero remercied as he took his father's vintage microphone away as his shadowy friend observed all of this. "You're welcome, my boy," Alastor said, then turned around and joined back to the rest of the main cast, looking at his son once walking back to them, waiting for him to begin his song. Once every single member of the group watched him, Izuku began to think about a song he could sing that was perfect for the theme of the holiday they were celebrating. He had searched for the perfect song in his mind for several, hoping that he could find one, while everyone just stared at him, waiting for him to begin his singing. But as he continued to think of a song for longer and longer, it started to seem like he couldn't find one, resulting in him becoming more and more anxious, fearing that he would be busted in front of everyone. This appeared to be the case, until in a sudden moment, a Christmas song materialized in his head that was not only perfect due to the type of instrument the shadowy helpers of his father acquired, but it was also one of the most classic Christmas songs, and he could even modify it to be ideal to mention the possible wishes of everyone in the hotel, making it excellent to be the first Christmas song Charlie had ever heard. With the Christmas song being chosen, Izuku vanished his anxiety by morphing a smile on his face and turning his body in the direction of the shadows, opening his mouth in the process. "Hey, boys, can you come here for a second?" Izuku asked politely, causing all the shadows to levitate to him. Once all the shadows had reached him, including his own shadowy companion, he started to explain the song he chose to them in a whisper, not wanting the members of the main cast to hear what he was saying, while almost everyone looked at him in confusion by seeing this. After he finished his speech, all the shadows nodded to him in understanding, agreeing to go along with his plan and going back to their original positions, readying themselves for their upcoming performance. Then, our protagonist moved his around and placed it into its earliest formation, lifting his left hand while holding up his left index finger, thus signaling that they were about to begin their song. 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Izuku counted as he moved his left hand a little bit, indicating the start of their performance. Once the counting had ended, all the shadows began to play on their instruments, creating a melody that almost every demon in the lobby enjoyed, with Alastor already knowing the name of the song his son chose just by the music the instruments released. After a little bit of playing on the instruments, they reached the part where the singing should have begun. So, with this information, Izuku moved his father's microphone to his mouth, opened his mouth, and began to sing, truly starting his performance turn in Jolly Old St. Nicholas, a Hazbin Hotel Christmas carol from down the foxhole if you want. I changed a little bit on the lyrics due to the fanfic. I hope this isn't an issue. Jolly Old St. Nicholas. Lean your ear this way. Don't you tell a single soul what I'm gonna say. Izuku sang as the shadows went on with their play on their instruments, and Charlie, Angel, Sirpentious, the Egg Boys, and even Vaggie just looked at him in shock, stunned by how well he sang, same with Razzle and Dazzle. While our young overlord's demonic relatives just listened to his song enjoyment, with Husk having his regular grumpy expression and mood, but enjoying his nephew's performance nonetheless. Christmas Eve is coming soon. Now, you dear old man, whisper what you'll bring to me. Tell me if you can. Jolly Old St. Nicholas? What you gonna bring to me? Is it a new All-Might poster that I can hang on the wall of my room? Or it is another All-Might figurine that I can add to my collection? He said in his singing as his father and aunt smiled at this, knowing how much of an All-Might fan he was. When the clock is striking 12. When I'm fast asleep. Down the chimney broad and black. With your pack you'll creep. All the stockings you will find hanging in a row. Mine will be the shortest. You'll be sure to know. Our young Cambion sang, then stopped in his singing for a little bit, with the shadows continuing to play on their instruments, I thought it's going to sound worse, but it's better than I thought. What a relief, he noted to himself, referring to that he expected his singing to be bad. Then he moved his body around and towards the direction of the shadows, going on with his speech once he was done with his moving. Can you boys play us up a little bit? He requested nicely, with the shadows starting to play the melody with more intensity. Yes, just like that. Let's make a big, grand finale, he noted as the shadowy helpers reached the level he needed. Yes, it's perfect, just how I like it, he remarked with delight, with all of the shadows, including his own shadow, sharing the emotion he obtained at that moment. And now, let's get back to it, our dear hero announced, turning around, facing the group, and continuing to sing. Miss Vaggie wants a brand new spear. And my aunt wants new knitting needles. My dad wants to make a deal. Let's hope he doesn't kill. Our young overlord told in his singing, with Husk cracking a tiny, tiny smile at his remark and with Alastor rolling his eyes jokingly at his son's statement, knowing that he didn't mean it on a way that would have offended him. Charlie wants a swarm of guests. Angel wants a gown with lace. Sirpentious wants to dominate hell. And my uncle just wants to rest. Now choose for me, dear Santa Claus. What you think is best. Jolly old St. Nicholas. What you gonna bring to me? Jolly old St. Nicholas. What you gonna bring? What you gonna bring to me? Izuku finished high above the clouds emotionally, closing his eyes and raising his left arm in the air in joyfulness, ending his song as the shadows also stopped playing on their music tools. Shortly after this, a silence followed his performance, causing Izuku to open his eyes and lower his left arm, becoming extremely nervous due to how quiet everyone was. However, this silence was short-lived, which was thanks to the Princess of Hell opening her mouth and beginning to talk, thus revealing her opinion on the song. That was amazing, Izuku, Charlie declared with a big smile on her face as she clapped with both of her hands, praising her young Cambion's singing. Excellent performance, my boy. The radio demon applauded as he clapped with hands as well, with every single demon, including Vaggie, who also thought that Izuku sang well, although just admitting it really barely sharing the same act as him. Truly magnificent. It was beautiful, Izuku, Niffty praised as she clapped with her hands. Nice one, kid, Husk remarked with a little smile, clapping with his hands. You sing well, Toots, Angel said, doing the act that everyone was doing. You acquire quite an exquisite singing voice, my pupil, Sirpentious noted as he also clapped with his hands, acknowledging the singing skills of his only student, with his minions doing the same act. Seeing that everyone liked his performance, Izuku couldn't resist but smile at this, knowing and being grateful for the fact that they enjoyed his singing. As he continued to smile and as the others cheered him, all the shadows, except Shadow, disappeared from sight, including their instruments, which were made out of shadows as well. Once the members of the main cast finished their applause, the cannibal serial killer spoke, earning the attention of every single individual in the lobby. Now then, I suppose after this flawless performance, we should take a rest and let us taste our delicious Christmas dinner, shall we? Alastor suggested, then turned his body in the direction of the hallway where the dining room he and his son put the meals was and started to move towards it, with everyone, including the 2 pets of the hotel, and the 2 personal bodyguards of Princess Charlotte, following him in the process. A Christmas dinner? The Princess of Hell questioned as she walked, and her eyes lightened up in a mixture of surprise and excitement, with the group being at the midway of their journey. Yeah, Izuku replied, gaining his royal friend. It's a tradition. During this time of the year, we make a traditional dinner for Christmas. I hope you'll like it, he stated as he and the rest of the group walked towards the dining room as well, being almost at their destination. Shortly after this sentence of his was over, they had finally reached the end of their journey, stopping in front of the double door of the dining room, with both of the doors having a circle-shaped window. After they arrived, the radio demon extended both of his arms and opened the doors of the room, allowing everyone to step inside. When Charlie saw the army of delicious meals placed on the table, her eyes became starry from the excitement instantly, with our dear hero observing her with a smile, being 100% sure that she liked the dishes just by looking at them. Once everyone was inside, each member of the group approached a chair and descended on it, with our protagonist being the last one performing this act thanks to him running back to them and grabbing the baking tray full of not-baked gingerbreads, putting them into the oven. Then, after everyone was at the table at least, and was sitting on their chairs comfortably, they began the consumption of their dinner, chatting with each other and laughing while doing this, with Kiki and Fat Nuggets also attending the dinner by eating the food that Izuku prepared for them in their feeding bowls. During this dinner, Charlie properly introduced Razzle and Dazzle to our dear hero, with the two bodyguards becoming fond of him almost instantly just by witnessing how happy he made their princess with this Christmas party. After they finished their meal, they headed back to the lobby and went on with their talking there, enjoying the party, drinking a little bit from the anthropomorphic cat Sinner's eggnog, and even trying on the Christmas sweaters the cockroach-like female demon knitted, with Charlie absolutely loving her own sweaters, even deciding to keep it on herself after everyone took them off, wearing it for the rest of the party, all the while the two pets of the hotel just rested and did nothing. As she chatted with our young Cambion, Izuku suddenly realized that he had forgotten to get the gingerbread out of the oven, causing him to end his conversation with Princess Charlotte. "Sorry, Charlie," Izuku apologized. "I need to go," he declared as he began to step backwards, with Shadow following him. "I'll be back in a second," he stated, and with his shadowy helper by his side, he turned around and ran in the direction of the kitchen, leaving his royal friend in the lobby with the others. As she observed her young Cambion leave the area, an idea popped up in Charlie's head, which was a perfect way to thank Izuku for all of this. So, with this, she moved her body around and started to approach Alastor, who was talking to his two servants' friends, much to Husk's delight, which he clearly enjoyed and didn't hate every second of it. "No, not at all." Al?" the Princess of Hell started, getting the attention of the trio. "Ah, my dear Charlie," the radio demon greeted as Charlie got to him. "Tell me, have you come here because something's bothering you?" "No, Al, not at all," Charlie said, then continued, "But can I ask you something?" "Of course," Alastor responded, delighted to help. Then, he moved his head down a little and Charlie whispered her plan into his ear, making the cannibalistic serial killer's grin widen by hearing her idea. "That's a great idea, my dear," the radio-loving overlord stated, making Charlie's smile become bigger. "We will do it immediately," he added, then told everybody about Princess Charlotte's plan, which everyone joined to, even Vaggie, although reluctantly. And thus, they started the preparation of the reward Charlie wanted to give to our young overlord. Meanwhile, Izuku went on running down the hallway, hoping that the gingerbreads didn't get burned. Once reaching the entrance of the kitchen, he unlocked it wide and rushed inside as fast as he could, putting on oven gloves and opening the door of the oven. Fortunately for him, the gingerbreads didn't become burned. Instead, they were excellently baked, perfect to be served for everyone. When he saw that the gingerbreads were done, he grabbed the baking tray that the gingerbreads were on and pulled it out of the oven, closing the door of the oven once having this act of his performed. After that, with the gingerbreads in his hands, our young overlord exited the kitchen and went through the hallway that could lead him back to his demonic relatives and friends, while Shadow closed the door of the kitchen behind his master's back and attempted to keep up with him. "I'm back," Izuku announced as he entered the lobby and looked at the baking tray full of gingerbreads. "Good news is, the gingerbreads didn't get burned, so we can eat them. I hope you'll like them," he remarked, moving his head up and setting his eyes upon the members of the main cast just enjoying the party. But instead, he saw something that made him widen his eyes in surprise. In the resting area of the lobby of the hotel, all three of the furniture and the small table were moved to the walls, thus offering a more open space and much easier accessibility to the Christmas tree. But that was not the most surprising thing he witnessed. The more surprising thing he saw was that there was a photo camera placed on a stand in the room, with everyone being positioned in front of it just a few meters away, showing their backs to the Christmas tree. Hearing his voice, every single member of the group turned their heads in his direction, with Charlie doing it with a sweet smile on her face. Seeing this, both Izuku and Shadow got pretty confused, causing the former to open his mouth and begin to talk. Guys," our young overlord started with confusion in his voice, "what are you doing?" "Well, it's just that. You have done a lot for the hotel, and I never had a chance to thank you for this," the Princess of Hell stated as she walked towards her young Cambion friend. "So when you mentioned that during this holiday, humans give present to each other, I thought it's the perfect opportunity for me to thank you for everything you did by making a group photo with everyone." she explained, revealing the reason why everyone was in front of the camera, causing our protagonist to shut his eyes even wider after he heard this. So, in case you can't see us or you miss us, you would have something that reminds you that no matter what happens, we're always here and you'll always have our support. She finished as all members of the group nodded with the exception of Vaggie, ending her explanation and hoping that her friend liked her idea. Izuku couldn't believe what he had just heard. Charlie, his only royal friend, wished to take a group photo with everyone, just to thank him for the amount of help and assistance he provided for the hotel. Due to this, our protagonist couldn't resist forming small tears of joy and gratitude in the corners of his eyes, causing him to become emotional. Charlie. Izuku started as his tears began to grow larger. "Oh, come on, my dear boy, there's no reason for you to cry," Alastor declared. "Besides, all of us agreed to do this for you," he announced, then continued. "Now, come over here and let us create this photograph," he requested, finishing his speech. "Okay," Izuku said, then wiped his tears away with his right hand while he held the baking tray with his left hand. Put the baking tray down on the small table that, at that moment, was positioned at the right wall of the lobby, took off his oven gloves, and with his shadowy companion, and with his royal friend, he approached the main cast, joining to them and positioning himself at the perfect spot. To be exact, at the moment they were about to perform the picture with the photo camera, which was wielded by one of the radio demon's shadows, Izuku placed himself between Alastor and Princess Charlotte, with the former being at his right side, and the latter standing at his left side. All the while shadow floated between his master and his friend. On the other side of the cannibalistic serial killer, our dear hero's uncle and aunt were positioned, with the former having his casual grumpy expression, and the latter acquiring a sweet smile on her face. Meanwhile, on the left side of the Princess of Hell, her girlfriend was standing, having a small smile which she morphed only for her girlfriend's sake. Next to Vaggie, the notable kingpin was Foundable, obtaining a smiling expression while a few of his minions stood at his left side. Finally, in front of the group, the gay pornstar was lying on his back on the floor, resting his head on his left upper hand and smirking, posing for the camera as his pet pig was laying on his stomach and he petted his head with his right upper hand, while Kiki, the other pet of the hotel, sat next to Angel's head. As everyone settled to their position, and as the shadow was about to make the picture, the radio-loving overlord opened his mouth, speaking up. "Say Merry Christmas, my dears," Alastor declared as he and everyone looked into the photo camera. "Merry Christmas," everyone said in unison, smiling at the camera, with the only exception being Husk, of course. Then, with a quick move, the shadow snapped with the photo, thus taking the picture that would serve as an object that captured the magic of this surprise Christmas party and would remind Izuku of this precious moment in his life. After the picture was taken, everybody went on with their previous activities, chatting and talking with each other, and even trying out the hot chocolate that Niffty made during the party. And during all this time, one single thought was inside Izuku's mind. All of this, the Christmas party, and everything they did that day, had definitely been worth it. The remaining last month until the day of the exam had flown by relatively fast, thus ending the 10-month-long training of our dear hero. During these 10 months, he not only became stronger and muscular physically due to his uncle's intense training and learned how to treat a few different types of injuries from his aunt, but he got a better hand in his abilities as well. Thanks to his 10-month-long training, the limit of the number of tentacles Izuku could control without a hitch extended to 3 instead of 2, and the number of shadows he could control had grown in number as well, becoming 3. Also, not only did the radius which our young overlord could teleport increase, turning into a larger one with the addition of 2 extra meters, thus becoming a 12-meter radius, but when he used this ability, it made him a little bit less dizzy and made him acquire a tiny bit lower chance of throwing up when he teleported rapidly. Not to mention that when he used his ability to see with his shadowy friend's eyes, not only did it cause him to experience a little bit less painful headaches, but he also became able to switch his view between other shadows, although he could only do this with Shadow and one other shadow he control over of at the time. All of this training that made him improve his abilities was done for one single purpose, to help him get ready for the day he was going to take the entrance exam of the hero school he wished to learn in and go to the most. Speaking of which, with the days in the last month passing by one after another, they slowly reached the day of the entrance exam, with Izuku becoming more nervous about it with each day. And thus, with each day eventually flying by, they had finally reached the day of the exam, which, to their luck, happened to be a Monday. Using this opportunity, on the weekend before the exam, Alastor requested our dear hero to stay in the now called Hazbin Hotel, as his father labeled it, for the whole weekend instead of going back to his mother on Sunday afternoon. They did this in order to train him a little bit more before his entrance, thus ensuring that he was 100% ready for it. Once they were done with all the 3 kinds of training, the radio demon asked his son to take a shower and rest, for the sake of him being prepared for the next day. He didn't need to repeat his request. Once Izuku had a shower and got his pajamas on his body, he instantly lunged towards and laid on it, covering himself with his blanket and falling asleep as fast as possible. And there it was. The big day. It had finally come. In the morning, once Izuku woke up, he got out of his bed, took a shower, washed his sharp teeth in his mouth, and dressed up as quickly as it was possible, not wasting any time. Then, accompanied by his shadowy companion, he grabbed the voodoo book he got from his father as a Christmas present nearly 10 years ago with his right hand and jolted out of his room, running down the hallway in order to get to the lobby. 1 or 2 minutes later, he reached the lobby area of the Princess of Hell's Rehabilitation Center, looking inside and earning a glimpse of the situation that was unfolding there. In there, every single member of the main cast was foundable. Charlie was chatting with her girlfriend. Sirpentious was drinking a cup of tea, keeping the tiny plate in his left hand and having the cup in his right hand, with his right pinky being his only finger that didn't touch the ear of the cup, holding it in a true British manner. And Angel was sitting on the sofa in the resting area of the lobby, doing something on his phone while Fat Nuggets was lying in his lap and was sleeping, with Kiki doing the same on the small table between the 3 furniture. As for Izuku's demonic relative, however, all 3 of them were gathered in the middle of the room, waiting for our protagonist to finally arrive. Seeing that everyone was in the lobby, our young Cambion entered the room with his shadowy friend, gaining the attention of his father, aunt, and uncle, with the most former opening his mouth and beginning. "My dear boy," Alastor greeted as he approached his son, and his 2 servants' friends followed him in his tracks, causing every single demon to look at our protagonist. "Hi, Dad," Izuku said, being nervous due to his upcoming exam, which was the only obstacle that separated him from starting his journey of becoming a true hero. "It's such a pleasure to see you." "Truly it is," the radio demon remarked, then continued. "Tell me, are you prepared for the big event?" he inquired, asking him about his preparedness for the entrance exam. "Yes, Dad, I'm ready," our young overlord replied, being as anxious as hell. "Do you have your voodoo book with you, my boy?" the cannibalistic serial killer wondered as he observed his only child with his eyes, obtaining his iconic wide grin. "You know that without it, you're not able to go back to the sweet mother of yours," he stated, reminding his son that without his book, he could go back only if he asked him to open a portal for him, thus allowing him to go back to his home. "Yes, Dad, I have it," Izuku declared with nervosity, which he attempted to hide as much as he could, lifting his right hand up and showing off his voodoo book to his father. Unfortunately for him, his anxiety was easily noticed by his aunt, causing her to speak up. "Are you okay, Izuku?" Niffty questioned with worry, being anxious about her nephew's mental state. "Yes, Auntie, I'm fine," our dear hero responded nervously. "Are you sure?" the cockroach female sinner asked. "You seem nervous," she pointed out, then went on with her speech. "You know you can always tell us," she declared, making her nephew remember back to her statement she made on the day he had that talk with Charlie, resulting in him letting out a sigh, knowing that his cover had fallen. "I know," Izuku said. "It's just that. What if I fail?" he wondered worriedly, then continued. "I mean, you helped and trained for 10 months just for this, and I don't want to be done for nothing." He confessed truthfully, observing the dark red-colored floor with his eyes with an upset expression. What he said came from the bottom of his heart. He didn't desire for his father's, aunt's, and uncle's efforts and assistance for him to be turned into nothingness. They did so much for him, and he didn't want to disappoint them. Hearing his explanation, the aunt of our dear hero's worry decreased and formed a kind smile on her face, with the radio-loving overlord performing the same act by softening his grin a tiny bit, both of them knowing that the core of Izuku's anxiousness was that he didn't want to fail them. However, neither Niffty nor Alastor was the first to speak up. Instead, it was Husk, our dear hero's uncle, was the one who began to talk, earning his nephews, bosses, and the cockroach female demon's attention. "Quite bitchin' about it, kid," the anthropomorphic cat sinner expressed grumpily, although in a not rude manner, not wanting to hurt his nephew with his words. "You'll be just fine," he noted, surprising our young Cambion with his reply. "My dear Husker's right, my boy," the radio demon stated, taking his son aback with his statement and ticking off his servant friend by calling him by the name he hated the most. "You will get a hang of it." "But what if I don't? What if I mess up something?" Izuku queried in nervosity. "You won't mess up anything, my boy," Alastor assured, then went on with his speech. "You know why?" he asked. "Because you're my son, my boy, and I'm certain that you will succeed," the cannibalistic serial killer stated, finishing his sentence. "Yeah, Izuku, you can do it," Niffty announced with joy. "We believe in you," Charlie declared happily as she and the moth-based female demon walked towards the group, with them being followed by the wannabe overlord and Hell's most famous gay porn star, with the former leaving his unfinished tea on the table and the latter being accompanied by his pet pig. "You'll get it done without a hitch," Vaggie stated with a tiny, supporting smile, surprising our dear hero even more by her different behavior towards him and by what she told him, still not a little bit used to him and her being on good terms now. "You got this, Toots," Angel reassured as he and the notable kingpin reached the location of the group. "It is an unquestionable fact that the pupil of the great Sirpentious will not fail," Sirpentious proclaimed as he slithered his way to his pupil and his group. All of this encouragement, support, and assistance he got from his demonic friends, teacher, and relatives caused Izuku to obtain small droplets of gratitude in the corner of his eyes, which slowly grew larger and larger with each passing second. Then, he performed an act that no one saw coming. As the tears of gratefulness appeared in his eyes, Izuku extended both of his arms, picked his aunt up with his left hand, touched his father and uncle with his right hand, and pulled all three of his demonic relatives to himself, embracing them with a big, group hug. "Thank you, guys," Izuku remercied as he was at the edge of crying like a baby, hugging his demonic loved ones close to his body, with his shadowy helper joining them as well. "I could have never got here with you," he thanked as all three of them, even Husk, looked at him with a smile by hearing, although the anthropomorphic cat sinner morphed just a tiny one on his face. All the while the rest of the gang observed the wholesome scene with their own smiles, with the Princess of Hell acquiring the largest and sweetest one. "You're welcome, my boy," Alastor said as his son continued to hug him. After a few more seconds, our protagonist released his grip on his demonic relatives and allowed them to exit the group hug, with his shadowy companion getting out of the gesture too and floating next to him, and his father continuing his speech. "Now, go. Show everyone who you are and what you're capable of," the radio demon demanded, encouraging his son. "Okay, Dad," our young responded as he wiped his tears away with his right hand. Then, he turned around, opened his voodoo book, and began to chant the words that were required to be told out loud in order to open the portal which let him go back to his loving mother. After he finished his chanting, the red-colored portal appeared and opened in front of him. He moved his head around and looked at his father, unlocking his mouth full of sharp teeth and beginning to speak. "I will let you know, Dad, about the exam after I took it, okay?" "As you wish, my boy," the radio demon answered. "Goodbye, my dear boy." "Bye, Dad," Izuku said, then closed his voodoo book and proceeded to move and step inside the portal, while Shadow turned into his shadow form, vanishing from sight. "Good luck, Izuku," Charlie exclaimed as her young overlord friend entered the portal and disappeared into it completely, with the gate between the realm of suffering and the world of the living closing almost instantly after he vanished from her and the other's sight. Once our dear hero was out of sight, Charlie moved her head and set her upon at the co-owner of her hotel, opening her mouth and letting her question known. "Did you get it, Al?" she inquired, talking about a secret arrangement, which only our teenager protagonist was not aware of, she did with the cannibalistic serial killer. "Ah, my dear, I'm hurt," Alastor remarked jokingly. "You would assume I would miss a big event such as my dear boy's entrance exam?" he stated. Then, with a snap of his finger, he summoned one of his red-colored, vintage radios into his hands. But this was no ordinary radio. thanks to his voodoo magic. With this special, Alastor could observe what his son did in his home realm at that certain moment, which was an act he didn't perform due to him wanting to grant his boy some privacy, thus allowing him to witness him taking his exam. When Charlie found out about this, she immediately requested the radio-loving overlord to let her join his activity, with her two causes being that she wanted to watch her young Cambion friend do his examination, and she desired to see how the mortal realm looked like, with, of course, the first reason being most important for her. And after he allowed her to come along, Princess Charlotte pitched the idea of this to the rest of the main cast, who joined in this action as well, even the wannabe overlord, who only went along with this idea just because of his pupil's sake. After the radio demon obtained his unique radio device, everyone turned their bodies around and walked to the resting area of the lobby of the Hazbin Hotel, with the notable Kingpin taking one of the two armchairs as his seat. The Princess of Hell, her girlfriend, and the gay porn star occupying the sofa, with Charlie sitting between the two, Vaggie being positioned at her right and Angel having a seat at her left, who also had fat nuggets. All the while Husk stood at the side of the sofa where the spider-like male sinner was foundable. Niffty sat on the left arm resting place of the second armchair, and Alastor placed his vintage radio on the top of the old-fashioned television, tuning it in once he accomplished this act. After he adjusted the device perfectly, he moved his body around and approached the armchair which had its left armrest occupied by his tiny female servant friend, descending down on it once he reached it. Moments later he sat down, out of the part of the radio that showed what channel it was playing at the moment. A huge screen appeared, offering everyone to see nothing but reddish static at first. But in just a few seconds, the view slowly started to become clearer, letting everyone have a better view. Then, all the statics vanished from the sight of the main cast, allowing everyone to set their eyes on the room of Izuku, as he stepped out of the portal, which closed behind him after he exited it, and appeared in the middle of his room, and also in the center of the screen. For a normal person, or demon, this scene wouldn't be so exciting, but for Charlie, it was astonishing, mainly due to her never seeing how a human teenager's room looked, making her acquire an excited smile on her face in the process, with her girlfriend observing her cooing with the own small smile of hers. As she and the others witnessed the screen, including Kiki, who woke up from her sleep due to the others' movements and talking the others proceeded to perform. Our protagonist put his voodoo book on his bed and began to undress himself, with Shadow coming out of his hideout and starting to help his master. Seeing this, by using his powerful demonic abilities, Alastor made the view become static once again, not desiring anyone to see his son without clothes. After a few moments, he made the screen viewable once again, allowing himself and everyone else in the room to set their eyes upon our young overlord and his shadowy companion. With the former wearing his black and white colored junior high uniform instead of the piece of attire that was just like his father's, with the only difference being the color scheme of course, causing the Princess of Hell to obtain even greater excitement by seeing her young Cambion friend in a uniform. Once he dressed up fully and put the clothes he wore previously into his wardrobe, Izuku put his voodoo book back to its original position on the shelf full of books and backed up the things he needed for the exam into his yellow-colored backpack, which included a few pencils and an eraser for the writing exam, and change of clothes. A light green shirt, a light green sweater, and light green jeans to be exact, for the practice part of the entrance exam. After that, he placed his backpack on his back, walked up to the door of his room, opened it fully, and exited his room, closing the door behind his back right after his shadowy friend got out of the room as well, levitating after him. Then, he went inside the dining room kitchen, hoping to find his mother there. Fortunately for him, his mother, Izukumidoriya, was inside the room, causing him to greet her, making her look in his direction with a tiny bit of surprise and also saying hi to her only living blood relative with a warm, motherly smile, causing everyone in the hotel, with the exception of the radio demon, the cockroach-based female demon, and the anthropomorphic cat sinner, to observe her look in shock, being dumbfounded by the fact that despite his antlers, ears, tail, sharp teeth, and short claws, Izuku was really similar to his mother in appearance. After talking to his mother and ensuring that he was all right, our young overlord said goodbye to her, with Inko doing the same act, then headed to the exit of the apartment, which served as its entrance as well. He and his mother lived in, got his signature red shoes on his feet, grabbed the handle of the door, pushed it downwards, and unlocked the door, allowing him and his shadowy helper to step out of the apartment, thus letting him begin his journey towards the hero high school he attended to study in. After both he and his shadowy companion left the apartment, with the former closing the door once they stepped out, they started to walk in the direction of the nearest train station, with this act being performed by him thanks to the fact that Yua High was quite far from his home. Fortunately for him, the weather was nice and the sky was clear, so there was not any rain that could slow him. They reached the train station. Izuku boarded the perfect train, sat on one of the seats, and continued to go on his way by using that vehicle. All the while Shadow, due to his shyness and to not disturb other people with his presence, went back into his shadowy hideout, disappearing from the sight of the passengers of the train. All the while, back in hell, the members of the main cast witnessed all of his actions, with Princess Charlotte being filled with enthusiasm by how many humans she saw on the screen. Once the train stopped at the station our dear hero needed, Izuku stood up from his seat and exited the vehicle, with Shadow coming out of his shadow from and positioning his pitch-black body next to his master. After he left the train station, our protagonist moved his head a tiny bit upwards, allowing him to look at the high hill that had the enormous building of Yua on the top of it from afar, with both him and every single member of the main gang, except for Husk and Alastor, becoming fascinated by the size of the building. As he observed the giant building of his possible future high school, Izuku took his phone out of his right pocket and checked the time on it. And when he did, he was shocked to see that the beginning of the entrance exam was 10 minutes away. Recognizing this, our young Cambion put his phone back in his right pocket and began to sprint in the direction of Yua, not wanting to miss the exam while his shadowy companion attempted to keep up with him as much as he could. Luckily for him, he didn't have to run for long. After around 4 minutes of running, he finally got to the gates of his country's top hero high school, with Shadow retreating back to his shadow form once more. The front gate of the school was huge, allowing a huge crowd of people to access the location at the same time. The area of the building was surrounded by a really long row of thick walls, offering protection for both the teachers and students of Japan's #1 ranked hero academy. Behind those walls, a woody, forested place was foundable around the building, giving an effect that the students were near to nature, while a wide pathway that started from the gate, leading straight to the main building of Yua, with a bunch of half-length statues were positioned at both sides of the pathway, possibly representing the great heroes of the early hero age. As Izuku observed the enormous structure of Yua, he took a deep breath, and with a little bit of anxiety, he stepped through the gate of the high school he intended to take the entrance exam, beginning to approach its building. And our protagonist was not the only one who was in this case. Besides him, countless amounts of students, both male and female, were in the area of the school, all of them heading towards the main building, sharing the reason for their presence there with our protagonist. While he was midway through his journey, a certain spiky, blonde-haired junior high male student noticed his presence, causing the student to become agitated by him in his sight, and him not being able to resist opening his mouth and getting his attention, just to bully him. "Oi, Deku!" the student shouted as he got nearer to our protagonist, making him stop in his tracks and turn around in surprise when he heard his voice. All the while our young overlord's shadowy friend and the demonic relatives of Izuku, even his grumpy uncle, adopted anger and hatred immediately, although the anthropomorphic cat demon didn't show it on his face, knowing damn well who was speaking to him. "Kaken?" Izuku queried in surprise by seeing his childhood friend, who was wearing the same type of uniform as him and had a blue-colored backpack on his back, despite knowing the fact that Bakugou had wanted to go to Yua for a long time. "Get out of my way before I kill you," Bakugou threatened in his causal frustrated style as he walked towards his direction, scaring the ever-living soul out of Izuku with his statement, and making Alastor, Niffty, and Husk adopt an even greater hatred towards Bakugou, with the rest of the main cast taken aback by his sudden, rude remark, especially Charlie. She couldn't understand it. How could on earth, or in hell, could anyone say something like this with such hate, disgust, and abhorrence to Izuku? To the kind, helpful, innocent kid, who was her good friend, and who had helped so much for her and the hotel during those 10 months. It just didn't make any sense for her. As she witnessed the screen, she was taken out of her surprised state by the aunt of her young Cambion friend speaking up, causing not only her, but the rest of the main gang to move their heads and look at her. Alastor. Niffty started with a sinister yet angered tone as everyone set their eyes upon her, witnessing her draw a huge knife out of her right with her right hand. "Please, let me take care of him," she requested as she clenched the handle of the huge knife with her right hand with a harder grip, trying not to unleash her anger. "As much as I, myself, wish for that as well, my dear Niffty, unfortunately, we can't do that," Alastor stated with a tiny bit of sadness, which was obtained by him due to him not being able to punish and torture Bakugou for all the bullying he did to Izuku. "We promised my boy that we won't perform such act on his friend." "I don't want to kill him," the cockroach-based female sinner clarified with a small smile on her face as she looked at her boss. "I just want to stab him, cut his tongue out, skin him, maim him, and dismember him for all the things he did with my sweet baby," she declared as she grabbed the huge knife with her other hand and observed it with craziness in her singular eye and with pure insanity in her voice, making the most of the demons in the lobby, with the exception of the radio demon and Husk, to become shocked and feel disturbed by hearing her list of things she wished to do on an actual teenager. Meanwhile, as this went on inside the Hazbin Hotel, in the human world, by seeing Kaken approach him and saying this to his face, Izuku started to experience fear, causing him to step back a little bit, flatten his ears and tail, and raise his arms, although not in a protective, ready-to-fight manner. "Good morning," our protagonist greeted as he wiggled with his hands in distress. "Good luck on the entrance exam," he stuttered as Bakugou passed by him, not saying any more word to him, just witnessing the pathway. This sudden change of act, of course, surprised our young overlord, with him even moving his body around and looking at him in shock as his childhood friend walked towards the building of UA High. Once Bakugou got far enough from him, our dear hero abandoned his discomfort and released a sigh of relief, relieved by the fact that he didn't do anything with him. Then, after he calmed down and straightened his ears and tail, Izuku reminded himself that he still had an entrance exam to do. An entrance exam that stood in his way and was the only obstacle that could prevent him from getting enrolled into the hero high school he desired to learn. An entrance exam that was the main reason for his long, 10-month-long training, during which his father, aunt, and uncle provided as much help as they could. And because of this, he hadn't allowed their helpful efforts to be done for nothing. So, with these thoughts in his mind, and with a newly acquired determination, Izuku adopted a confident grin and started to continue his journey in the direction of the main building of his country's top hero academy, taking his first step in making his big dream come true. All of this, and this scene would have been really nice, if he hadn't accidentally placed his left foot behind his right leg as he lifted it, causing him to plummet towards the hard surface of the pathway. "Dang it," Izuku thought as he fell towards the pathway, thinking that he would hit the ground in just a few seconds. But to his surprise, in the middle of his fall, he stopped. Somehow, his falling was interrupted. When his mind processed this, he also felt that two hands were touching his shoulder, each of them being grabbed by one hand. In response, our protagonist moved his head and looked behind his back, hoping to see the one who prevented him from crashing into the pathway. And as he performed this act, he widened his eyes in surprise when he witnessed Shadow, his shadowy companion he had known since the day his quirk manifested, observing him and placing his pitch-black hands on his shoulders, thus keeping him from falling. After this discovery, Shadow moved his arms backwards, pulling his master in the opposite direction he was about to fall, positioning him back to his original posture. As Izuku placed his left foot next to his right foot, and as his brain still processed what had just happened, Shadow floated next to him, looking at his master innocently and happily with his jungle green eyes, with the latter being judged by the shape of his eyes. And as his shadowy friend observed him, our young Cambion couldn't help but smile at this, knowing that Shadow was one of the beings, aside from all the members of the main cast of course, who had always got his back, no matter what the situation was. "Thank you, Shadow," Izuku remercied as he looked at his shadowy, being grateful for him not letting him hit himself from the fall. Hearing his master's appreciation, Shadow's joyfulness increased, with him always happy to help and/or save his master from anything. But as he did this, his visionary organs picked up the sight he had never expected, resulting in him shooting his jungle green-colored eyes wide, seeing the sudden change of behavior of his shadowy companion. In his confusion, Izuku turned his head in the direction Shadow was looking, curious about what made his shadowy friend act like this. And when he performed this act, he widened his eyes in surprise as well, with this due to what, or rather who, he set his eyes upon. In front of his body, just 1 or 2 feet away, a teenager girl was standing, around his age, maybe just older than him by just 1 single year. The girl was short with a slender yet curvy figure, fair skin, and auburn hair with eyes that matched in color. She had a perpetual pink blush on her cheeks, and her eyes were large and round with thick upper lashes, 2 more extended and more prominent ones on either side, and fewer but more individually pronounced lower lashes. Her hair was shoulder length with short bangs, and the style was bobbed with 2 long strands framing her. She also had her right hand extended towards our young Cambion, with her fingertips acquiring small, thick pads similar to the paws of an animal, with her other hand probably obtaining the same feature. Her attire consisted of a light pink scarf that had both vertical and horizontal white stripes, and a brown-colored coat, wearing her usual white sailor blouse with a red ribbon under it, with her sailor blouse being just half of her uniform. The second half of her junior high uniform was a teal skirt, which was pleated. She also had black leggings on her legs and brown-colored dress shoes, completing her clothing. The only object she acquired was a blackish, grayish backpack on her back, which possibly had the things she needed for both the writing and the practical part of the entrance exam. By realizing that both of the individuals were looking at her, she became a little bit nervous, making her open her mouth and begin her explanation. I'm sorry," the girl apologized as she lowered her right hand. "I just saw that you were falling, and I wanted to help you by using my quirk on you," she explained, then continued. "But looks like I don't need to," she said with a kind smile on her face as Izuku just stared at her in absolute shock, completely taken aback by the fact that a girl around his age, out of all people, was speaking to him. "Aren't you nervous?" she wondered kindly with the same smile she formed moments ago, hiding her own nervosity with it. Our young overlord stuttered as he formed a tiny blush on his cheeks, still taken aback by her talking to him. "I need to go now," the girl announced, then went on with her speech. "I like your shadow buddy, by the way," she stated, surprising Shadow with her remark. "Bye," she said as she waved at our protagonist, then turned her body in the direction of the building of Japan's first-ranked hero high school and continued her journey towards it. All the while Izuku just witnessed her take her leave, still not being able to believe that he, technically, spoke to a girl near his age. Back in hell, after the members of the main gang observed this whole scene, it was enough to calm down everyone, including the anthropomorphic, alcohol-loving cat sinner, the cannibalistic serial killer, and the cockroach-like female demon, with them being ensured that if Izuku got enrolled into the school, which was the thing they thought with 100% certainty, there would be still other students who wouldn't treat him like trash for no reason or cause. As our dear hero looked at the girl getting inside the building, his shadowy helper poked his right shoulder with his left index finger, resulting in Izuku getting out of his phase and remembering the main reason for him being in the area of Yua in the first place. After thanking his shadowy friend for accomplishing this activity, he continued his way towards the entrance of the main building, unlocking one of its doors and entering it after he reached it. Once both he and Shadow were inside, Izuku decided that the best option for him to find the classroom he was instructed to write the written exam in the easiest way was to follow the horde of students, him performing this act after he thought this out. Just 1 or 2 minutes and he and his shadowy companion got to the classroom, looking around to check if it was the right classroom. After he was 100% sure that this was the classroom he had to go to, he stepped inside, grabbed a seat, took his pencils and eraser out of his pocket, and started to write his written exam. All the while Shadow observed him in shadow form, and the main cast watched him write his answers down, with Charlie learning a lot about superhuman society with the questions in the exam and the answers given by her young Cambion friend. After finishing it, he stood up from his seat and handed it over the teacher who looked over the students, and who, by the way, looked like a small humanoid rat and was the principal of UA, Principal Nezu. In the end, Izuku completed the writing exam with a 90% result, thus passing the writing part of the entrance exam. After he exited the classroom, our protagonist used the same tactic to find the auditorium of the school, wishing to get to it as quickly as he could. Luckily for him, the journey was not longer than the one towards the classroom, just 2 or 3 minutes. Once reaching the entrance of the auditorium, Izuku moved his head and looked around, attempting to earn a better picture of the look of the room. The auditorium was gigantic, having an almost uncountable amount of seats that offered a place for the possible future students to sit down, with almost all of the chairs being occupied by the students who intended to take the entrance exam. At the end of the auditorium, a podium, which was about to be used by the teacher who was planned to give the tasks they needed to do during the practical exam, was placed, and a giant screen was positioned, mainly used for presentations. Fortunately for him, there were still a few free chairs for him to descend on, but unluckily for him, the nearest one to him was next to Bakugou, making our dear hero become distressed once again. Nonetheless, he still decided to walk towards that seat, causing his childhood friend to glare at him with fury in his eyes, scaring Izuku even more. Then, he pulled out the chair and sat on it. Meanwhile, he tried to ignore Bakugou's presence as much as he could. A few minutes of waiting later, out of nowhere, all the lights in the auditorium were turned off and the huge screen lit up, with a big, digital form of the school's logo appearing in the middle of the blue-colored screen. Then, the lights above the podium lightened up, one after another, while from below the podium, a person ascended, allowing every student in the room to observe him once his full body was shown. The man was tall and slim with long blonde hair, which was spiked upwards in a large tuft behind his head, and he acquired a small brown mustache. Behind his yellow-glassed glasses, he had rectangular eyes with concentric pupils and greenish-yellow irises. His clothing consisted of a black jacket with a very tall collar, upturned and complete with studs, and matching black pants and knee-high boots. He sported shoulder pads, a red belt around his waist, and elbow pads, all studded, and black fingerless gloves. On his neck, he was wearing a directional speaker, possibly for his quirk. As the last piece of his attire, he had a pair of headphones with the word Hage written on the headband and a pair of orange-tinted shades. This man was no ordinary human. He was Present Mike, a hero, and a professional one. In fact, at the moment he showed himself to his audience, all the nervousness our protagonist obtained vanished immediately and was replaced with pure excitement. All the while his father just looked at the screen, which had Present Mike being shown, with disgust, which was mainly thanks to his unsuccessful deal with him all those years ago, and him thinking of the hero's radio show and career as a joke and a disgrace to the radio genre in a whole. For all you examinee listeners tuning in, welcome to my show today, Present Mike announced with a smile on his face as he threw his hands into the air. Everybody say hey. He requested from the crowd as he moved his right hand next to his right ear, which was covered by the headphones he was wearing, waiting for the response of the crowd of students, which was just awkward silence. What a refined response, he remarked jokingly, then went on with his speech. Then, let me give you a quick rundown on the practical exam, he declared. Are you ready? Yeah, the pro-hero questioned enthusiastically, with his answer for his inquiry being the same silence from before. It's the voice hero, Present Mike, oh my god. Izuku mumbled with pure fanboyism. I love his show, I listen to it every week, he stated as he witnessed Present Mike with excitement. I'm so excited, all teachers at UA are pro-heroes, he noted excitedly, still can't believing that he saw Present Mike in the flesh, ticking off the explosion quirk user next to him with his demeanor. Shut up, Bakugou ordered, demanding Izuku to shut his mouth, angering Niffty, Alastor, and Husk with his behavior as they watched the screen. You listeners will be taking 10-minute mock urban battles after this, Present Mike revealed as the title saying You Are Here came up on the screen where the logo previously was. You can bring whatever you want with you, he said as 7 letters, starting from A and ending at G appeared on the big screen, showing the name of the mock urban areas. After this presentation, you'll go to the specified battle center, all right? The pro-hero explained, causing everyone to look at the cards they acquired after the writing exam, all of the students performing this act in silence yet again. Okay, he exclaimed with enthusiasm. They separated us in order to not let friends work together, the blonde, spiky-haired student remarked grumpily, making our young overlord look at his childhood friend's card, just to check that what he said was true or not. And he was right. Despite their examinee numbers following each other, both of them were assigned to different battle centers, with Izuku being registered to Battle Center B, and Bakugou being entrusted to go to Battle Center A. "What are you looking at? Do you want me to kill you?" he warned angrily, scaring Izuku and making Charlie, Vaggie, Angeldust, and Sirpentious to begin to adopt a hatred for him. "Damn, now I can't crush you," he noted with frustration as our young Cambion just observed. All the while Shadow tried to not come out of his hideout and attack the Explosion quirk user, and the hatred of the Princess of Hell, her girlfriend, the gay porn star, and notable kingpin towards Bakugou now being complete. 3 different types of fake enemies are being stationed at each battle center. Present mic listed as the black symbols of the robotic enemies showed up on the screen. Each of them earn points based on their level of difficulty. He said, then continued, "Your goal, my listeners, is to use your quirks to get points by destroying the faux villains." He stated as a digital form of himself immobilized those enemies. Of course, attacking other examinees and any other unheroic actions are not allowed, he declared nicely, finishing his speech. Or so he thought. "May I ask a question?" A male student wondered as he stood up from his seat, lifting his right hand into the air and holding a piece of paper in his left hand. "Go on," Present Mike answered as he pointed at the student with his right index finger, causing the light to turn up above the student, thus revealing his look with more detail. The student had a relatively tall and muscular body, acquiring a wide frame. He obtained short dark blue hair, flattened neatly down and parted on the right side of his head, a small patch completely shaved near the base of his head, and rather square eyes that matched the notably pointed shape of his jaw. He had eyebrows that seemed to be permanently pointed inwards, quite thin and long, with the far ends being sharply hooked inwards. He also wore glasses with rectangular lenses on his face, offering him better eyesight. He sported a light brownish jacket, a white dress shirt, and a tie with light and dark blue stripes, dark blue jeans, and black shoes, matching his attire. After he stood up, the student pointed at the sheet of paper in his left hand with his right index finger, beginning his speech. "On the printout, there are 4 types of enemies," the student pointed out as he witnessed the pro-hero with a serious expression. "If that is a misprint, then you, the most prominent school in Japan, should be ashamed of that foolish mistake," he declared, then continued. "We examinees are here in this place because we wish to be molded into exemplary heroes," he stated, then moved his body around and pointed his left index finger right at our young overlord. "You, over there, with the deer ears and antlers," he said as Izuku pointed at himself in confusion. "You've been muttering all this time, it's annoying," the student remarked. "If you're here just to chat, then you should immediately," he stated seriously, making most of the crowd chuckle a little bit quietly and causing our protagonist to lower his ears and tail, and place his hands on his in embarrassment, resulting in his demonic relatives, especially his aunt, to become more agitated, being angry for that there were still jackasses who messed with Izuku just because of this silly axe. And as this went on, amongst the crowd, a teenager girl, who had long black hair, causal skin tone, a right eye with a white sclere, a red iris, a black, narrow pupil, and a blind left eye with a huge vertical scar, and wore an attire that was similar to the girl's uniform who wanted to save Izuku from falling, turned her head in the direction where our protagonist and the male student was, shotting her eyes wide in surprise when she saw the former. But this surprise was quickly replaced with happiness by seeing him. With anger she felt towards the male student who humiliated Izuku being added as well. Okay, settle down examinee number 17111. The voice hero requested. "Thank you for your question," he remercied. Then suddenly, a 4th fake enemy icon came up on the screen behind him. The 4th type of villain is worth 0 point. He's rather an obstacle than a foe, he explained as his digital form appeared on the screen and walked to the symbol of the faux enemy. "He is not indestructible, but there's no reason to defeat it," he clarified. "I recommend you listeners that you should just try to avoid him." "Thank you very much," the male student thanked as he bowed to the pro-hero in thankfulness. "Please excuse for the interruption," he apologized as he descended back to his seat, with the light above his head turning off. For all of the examinees, the purpose of the foe that worth 0 points had made sense now. It was like an obstacle in a video game they had to avoid at all costs. Not only that, the whole thing seemed like a video game. As the students shared their thoughts about this, Present Mike continued to head on with his speech. "That's all for me," the pro-hero stated, Finally, I'll give you listeners a present, our school motto, he declared, then began his thoughtful sentence. Just as Napoleon Bonaparte once said, "A true hero is someone who can face and overcome life's misfortunes," he said, finishing his quote. Go beyond. Plus ultra, President Mike announced as the slogan showed up on the screen behind his back, revealing the motto of the school, with Princess Charlotte, back in the fiery pits of hells, even liking the slogan. Now, I wish every one of you good luck, he said, ending his presentation once and for all as Izuku looked at the paper in his hands, having a feeling that was a mixture of nervosity and determination. After the presentation was over, all of the students, including our young Cambion, stood up from their chairs and exited the auditorium, heading to one of the nearby dressing rooms in order to get dressed in more comfortable clothes that were perfect for the practical exam. Izuku did the same act once he entered one of the dressing rooms, getting his light green shirt, light green sweater, and light green jeans on his body, with his shoes being the only things that remained from his original attire. And with his father distorting the screen, he and the rest of the main gang were watching in hell as long as Izuku was undressed, with Alastor desiring for everyone to see his boy without clothes. Once dressing up fully, Izuku left the dressing room and headed in the direction of the battle center he needed to go. All the while he was escorted by Shadow, who had come out of his hiding place. After he reached the location of Battle Zone B, both he and his shadowy helper widened their eyes in shock, which was not only due to how many possible future students were there, but also due to how huge the whole area seemed to be. It really looked like an urban area, full of very tall buildings that were so high that they were able to be detected by the examinees despite the giant walls surrounding the battle center. There it was. The opportunity. The chance for Izuku to show his skills and give everything he got from that 10-month-long training he performed with his demonic relatives. It was a time for him to become a hero. As he thought about this with anxiety, observing the other examinees and a tiny bit jealous of their confidence, from the top of a nearby pillar, the voice hero suddenly spoke up, gaining everyone's attention. "What are you waiting for?" President Mike queried as every single examinee and Shadow turned their heads in his direction. "There's no countdown in real fights," he noted, then went on with his speech. Come on, time is running out." The pro hero alarmed, thus announcing the beginning of the practical part of the entrance exam. As he said this, our dear hero and his shadowy companion moved their heads towards the gate of the battle zone, allowing them to gain the sight of everyone rushing inside Battle Zone B as quickly as they could, wanting to get as many points in a short amount of time as they could. Witnessing this, Izuku moved his legs and began to run inside the battle zone as well, with his shadowy friend flying after him, thus beginning his practical exam. During this time, he mainly used and controlled his tentacles as his weapons, not using the techniques his uncle taught him due to the opponents, which were robots being made out of metal, crushing and destroying them with his tentacles, while Shadow tried to help him in his fights by distracting the robots and attacking them as well. To dodge the attack of his foes, our young overlord utilized his teleport ability, successfully avoiding every single strike with this capability of his. As he performed all of these actions, the members of the main cast continued to observe him with the help of the special radio and the screen emitted by it. With Alastor witnessing his son's actions with fatherly pride, which pride was shared by our protagonist's aunt and uncle, Sirpentious looking at the screen in awe, possibly thanks to the robots he saw, already planning to build his own robot, and Charlie even cheering for her young Cambion friend in excitement. Meanwhile, as all the possible future hero students of UA were doing their best on the practical exam and the main gang was watching Izuku battling with robots, back inside the main building of Japan's top hero academy. In a dark room, where the only sources of light was emitted by a huge, wall-long screen, the principal and all of the teachers in UA were sitting in their seats, with the exception of one teacher, and were looking at the screen that showed several camera footages, presenting the areas of different battle centers and each of them having students on them, immobilizing robots and doing their exam. In this practical exam, the examinees don't possess the knowledge of the numbers and the locations of the enemies. Principal Nezu noted as he observed the screen, they have a limited amount of time in a vast area, and they have to draw the attention of their foes. He said, then continued. There are ones who use their abilities to locate the positions of the villains, while others utilize the mobility of their quirk in order to find enemies as fast as they are able to. He remarked as he looked at one of them that showed a teenager boy with 6 arms, searching for robots, then another which presented the blue-haired male student using his quirk. There are also ones who can keep their calmness even in the most dangerous situations. The principal noted as he set his eyes upon a footage that showed a teenager boy with blonde hair and a belt around his waist that shot out a laser, thus destroying a nearby enemy, while others cope with the stress of the exam by just staying positive and perform the exam with delight. Principal Nezu remarked as one of the camera footage presented the black-haired, mysterious girl from the crowd levitating in the air with the help of flames exiting the bottom of her feet, acting as small thrusters, and melting and incinerating a robot with the fire coming out of her hands, and enjoying the thrill of the battle. He said as he looked at one of the footage with Bakugou on it, who had just destroyed a bunch of robots all on his own. All of these abilities are needed to keep the peace in the streets are turned into points in this test. The principal finished, ending his speech as he and the teachers continued to witness the screen. As they observed the screen with the numerous camera footages on it, Allmight, who was in the room as well and was in his skinny form, which form, besides the other teachers and the principal, no one, even our dear hero, didn't know about, noticed the presence of our young overlord on one of the camera footages, making him shoot his eyes a little bit wide. He was taken aback seeing the boy he talked with nearly 10 months ago here, but he also felt joyfulness for him, knowing that he didn't give up his dream and took his advice, causing the symbol of peace to form a small smile on his face. He was not the only one who was witnessing our protagonist. In the back of the room, Eraserhead, a pro hero with a tall, slender body, long black hair, and bags under his eyes, sporting a baggy black outfit that consisted of a long-sleeved shirt and matching pants that were tucked into his boots, a utility belt around his waist, a scarf around his neck, with his yellow-colored goggles being covered by it, was leaning to the wall, looking at our dear hero as he destroyed opponent after opponent. And as he continued to observe him for longer and longer, it started to make less sense for him. It was far enough for him to deal with murder cases that mostly included villains or heroes who later turned out to be corrupt, getting killed in various ways, like getting hanged, being shot in the head, or becoming dismembered, with the ones who committed these crimes never being caught, leaving without a single trace. But now, there was a kid who could summon tentacles that he seemingly was able to control, but he could also teleport with his shadow who acted as his helper. It just didn't make any sense to him. And to top it off, those capabilities were totally different, not having any kind of connection to one another. And yet, the kid had those two powers, and he was able to use them, thus having a quirk that shouldn't exist in the first. And because of this, the pro hero decided to keep his eyes on the kid, in case he would pass the entrance exam. As he went on witnessing our protagonist, one of the teachers opened their mouth, beginning to speak. "Doesn't this year's group look promising?" the teacher wondered, observing the examinees in the process. "Well, we can't know for sure yet," another teacher, a male one, expressed, then continued. "Their true test is about to come," he stated, then extended his right hand towards a controlling panel, pushing down a red-colored button with his right index finger, activating something. At the moment he did this, in all the battle zones, the ground suddenly began to shake and long cables were ripped, creating large dust clouds, causing everyone to stop their activities and turn their heads in the direction of the explosions that made the dust clouds, including our dear hero and his shadowy helper. As they performed this act, the auditory organs of our young Cambion picked up the sound of giant wheels approaching their location, getting closer and closer with each moment. Then, out of the dust cloud, an enormous robot, the 0-pointer, appeared, towering over all nearby buildings and being larger than all 3 types of robots. Izuku stared at it with absolute shock and fear, with his shock, back in hell, being shared by every single member of the main cast, including his father. Present Mike said that it only would be an obstacle. He didn't mention that it would be that huge. As he looked at the faux villain, the 0-pointer raised its left hand and smashed it into the ground, causing a giant dust cloud and creating a huge gust of wind, scaring most of the examinees to their lives, with this being the case with Izuku as well. As the gust of wind vanished and dust cloud disappeared, and the 0-pointer continued its way towards the possible future students of UA, Due to the sheer fear he experienced, our protagonist fell backwards as tears of afraidness started to form in the corner of his eyes. All the while the rest of the examinees ran past him, rushing in the opposite direction where the zero-pointer was. Shortly after this, our young overlord was about to act as same as the other examinees, crawling after and trying to follow them. Meanwhile, Shadow attempted to help him up. As he performed this act of his father, despite understanding his son's fear, witnessed him through the screen with sureness, knowing that his only child wouldn't give up and get spooked that easily, and his assumption would soon come true. Because, as Izuku stood up with the help of his shadowy friend, he was stopped in his act by something he didn't expect to hear. Oh, someone said in pain behind Izuku, making both him and Shadow turn around, desiring to know the one who let out this sound. And when they did this, they set their eyes upon the same girl they met in front of the main building of Yuha High, having her right leg stuck under the rubble caused by the zero-pointer, thus not allowing her to move. At the moment, for Izuku, the time seemed to slow down for a moment. The blood inside his veins began to get filled with adrenaline, triggering the flight or fight response. It was just like the time the sludge villain attacked. But there was a big difference. Instead of him, someone else was in mortal danger. And how could he become and call himself a hero if let someone die? So, although every muscle inside his body told him to flee, he chose to fight. After this decision, he jolted towards the girl as fast as he could, while his father's grin grew in size a little bit by seeing his son's act, ensured that his presumption was right. As he rushed in the direction of the girl, our protagonist moved his head and looked at his shadowy companion, opening his mouth and beginning to speak. "Shadow," Izuku started, "free her leg from the rubble and get her away from here as far and fast as you can," he ordered, with his shadowy helper nodding to him with his head and flying forward to the girl, removing the rubble, freeing her leg, and pulling her away from the scene as quick as he was able to, surprising her with this action. Once he saw that both his shadowy companion and the girl were far enough, our young Cambion focused his attention on the enormous enemy that was approaching, lifted his right hand, and prepared himself for what he was about to do. Why, would you ask? Because, my dear readers, our dear hero still had a trick under his sleeve. A technique that his father taught him during those 10 months. A technique that could act as his trump card. And despite him being able to use this technique only once a day, and it was really hard to perform, it was still excellent in situations such as the current one. So, with his plan already settled in his mind, our young overlord touched his right thumb and right middle finger together and snapped with them, thus beginning his technique. At the moment he snapped with his fingers, 3 giant fiery portals opened on the ground around the zero-pointer and 3 colossal tentacles, larger than the zero-pointer, arose from the portals, with 1 tentacle emerging from each portal, shocking everyone with their size. After they came out, with a green aura around his hands, Izuku took control of his tentacles, starting to wrap them around the massive robot while trying to concentrate as much as he could. But as soon as the tentacles began to wrap themselves around the body of the zero-pointer, the robot started to resist, not stopping its advance and attempting to shake off the tentacles, making our protagonist have a harder time controlling his tentacles and accomplishing what he wanted to do. In response, Izuku put even more strength into his move, which was indicated by the aura around his hands becoming larger and brighter with each passing second. All the while massive droplets of sweat proceeded to form on his forehead. This act of his resulted in him getting his control over his tentacles back and making them start to wrap around the body of the giant robot. As green-colored voodoo symbols began to appear around him, he commanded his tentacles to lift the zero-pointer into the air, which cost him even more power and made every examinee's jaws drop. Then, in the air, his tentacles continued to envelop the giant robot even more, while the zero-pointer started to show less and less resistance. And as the tentacles were about to wrap themselves around the body of the obstacle enemy, numerous amount of shadowy beings with sharp teeth and horns began to exit the fiery portals and fly around the nearly enveloped zero-pointer, observing the scene with delight. Once the huge machine was fully wrapped around by our young Cambion's tentacles, 3 long and giant barbed wires came out of the portals and wrapped around the tentacles as well, securing the hold of the tentacles on the zero-pointer. Seeing everything was complete, Izuku formed his right hand into a fist and clenched it as hard as he could, trying to draw out blood from it. A few seconds, and then it happened. One of his nails pierced the skin on his palm, allowing a single droplet of blood to exit his hand, landing on the concrete. But it was still enough amount to accomplish what our protagonist desired to do. At the moment the droplet of blood touched the ground, huge rays of light came out of the small gaps between the tentacles, with them beginning to descend towards the ground a tiny bit. Then, all of the tentacles exploded with a massive explosion, destroying the zero-pointer and the barbed wires completely, causing the shadows around the tentacles to scatter and return back to the fiery portals before they closed and vanished from sight as every single possible future hero student in Battle Zone B just stared at the whole scene with their mouths open and in absolute shock. With most of the main cast, with the exception of Niffty and Husk, obtaining the same shock, with the radio demon just observing the whole procedure with a slightly wider smile and delight, happy to see everyone witness a glimpse of the true power of his son. After the portals disappeared, the green aura around his hands faded, and the voodoo symbols vanished from sight. Izuku immediately collapsed and landed on his butt, trying to catch his breath due to this technique draining so much energy from him. Seeing this, Shadow left the side of the girl and floated to his master, checking if he was alright or not. Once he got to him and saw he was just really tired, he lent a hand to his master and assisted him in standing to his feet, just as Present Mike would unlock his mouth and would begin to speak. "Time's up," the voice hero exclaimed, announcing the end of the practical exam, and thus the ending of the entrance exam. Hearing this announcement, our young overlord became a little bit upset and anxious, fearing that he might have not earned enough points, but he was quickly comforted by his shadowy friend placing his pitch-black left hand on his right shoulder, ensuring him that he didn't need to worry, resulting in Izuku calming down a bit. As everyone looked in the direction where the zero-pointer previously was in shock, from behind, a small person began to approach each student, getting them out of their stunned state, with the person asking them if they were all right and if they had any kind of injury. Healing them with her healing kiss to the injured part if they had one, giving them gummy bears to eat as a reward for them taking the practical exam. Just a few moments, and she reached our dear hero as well, opening her mouth and beginning to talk to him. "Are you all right, dear?" The person wondered kindly, making Izuku and Shadow move their bodies around and set their eyes upon her. Truth be told, they were quite taken aback by her appearance. She was an elderly woman who was as tall as, or a little bit higher than our protagonist's aunt, and had gray hair styled into a netted bun, a large syringe poking diagonally out of it to the left. She also possessed a notably small nose and eyes which acquired 2 little dashes, and a long mouth with defined nasolabial folds. She was wearing a doctor's lab coat and a dress with yellow and red vest-like designs on either side, 2 yellow buttons, and a belt with a pink R-shaped buckle. She sported pink boots on her feet and a helmet around the sides of her head, with a purple-tinted visor joining it over her eyes. In addition, she obtained a cane designed like a syringe in her left hand, acting as an object that helped her to walk around with more ease and also assisted her in healing the injured. As Izuku observed the short, old woman, who was actually a retired hero, recovery girl, in surprise, he reminded himself of the question she asked, causing him to unlock his mouth and start to speak. "Yes, ma'am, I'm fine," our young Cambion assured, then went on with his speech. But the girl over there injured her leg when the rubble fell on it," he stated as he pointed at the brown-haired girl with his right index finger, causing the old woman to turn her head into the direction he pointed at. "I see," recovery girl said, focusing her attention back on our protagonist. "Thank you for letting me know, dear," she remercied, extending her right hand towards Izuku and opening it, revealing that she had some gummy bears in it. "Here, have some gummies." "Thank you, ma'am," Izuku thanked as he grabbed the gummy bears with his right hand, bowing to the retired hero in thankfulness. As this interaction went on between the two, back inside the main building of UA, all the teachers stared at the camera footage that showed our dear hero in silence, most of them performing this in awe as well, amazed by his abilities and how quickly he handled the threat of the zero-pointer, including All Might. Of course, in the past, there were other students who battled with the giant robot, but there was no one who could destroy it that fast. And, to be honest, although they didn't say it out loud, all the teachers agreed that it would be a waste of potential if he didn't get enrolled in the hero course. This quietness was short-lived, with this thanks to the hero Eraserhead starting to speak, thus breaking the silence. "Nezu, the eraser hero started. Yes, Eraserhead? Principal Nizu asked. Who's that kid? The pro hero inquired, pointing at the footage with Izuku on it. Let me check. The humanoid rodent said, then extended his right paw towards a pile of papers, with all the papers containing information about every examinee, such as their name and quirk, and pulled the one out of the pile that had the information of our young overlord on it, starting to read it out loud once it was in his hands. The young man's name is Izukumidoriya. Izukumidoriya, Eraserhead repeated, recognizing only the name Midoriya due to hearing about Inko and her work during the time she was a model through advertisements that included her promoting something. Indeed, the principal confirmed, then continued, and he's HM. Interesting. He noted in surprise as he looked at the paper and read it. What it is, the eraser hero wondered. It says here that his quirk is called Overlord, Nezu stated, confusing and surprising most of the teacher Sheros with his reveal. Overlord? Cementos questioned in confusion. Correct, the principal answered, and apparently, he's able to teleport with the help of his shadow that acts as his guardian, and can summon tentacles that he can control, just as we witnessed. He said as he read the description of Izuku's quirk. What a strange quirk, Midnight remarked. I've never heard of such quirk before, Ectoplasm noted. I want him in my class, Eraserhead demanded, taking the principal aback with his request. Are you sure about that, Eraserhead? Principal Nezu queried as he looked at the hero in his seat. I'm sure, the pro hero responded. As you wish, my friend, the humanoid rodent replied, then turned his head back to the screen. But it depends on if he passed the exam or not. I know, the eraser hero said, continuing to observe the screen and the footage presenting Izuku, knowing that he would keep his eyes on him and would find out the reason for the strangeness of his quirk, one way or another. After the entrance exam was officially over, all examinees left the battle zones, went back to the dressing, and dressed back into their uniforms, attempting to leave the ground of Yua. Our protagonist was no different. Once he got his junior high uniform back on his body, which activity his shadowy friend assisted him in, and put his yellow backpack on, he stepped out of the dressing and started to head in the direction of the exit of the main building of his country's top hero academy, opening it and stepping through it after finding. Then, with casual steps, he approached the gates of Yua and exited, leaving the area of the school and beginning his journey back to the place he and his mother were living. All the while Shadow accompanied him on this journey. Seeing that the big event of the day had finally ended, and not wanting to disturb his son's privacy, the cannibalistic serial killer deactivated the special radio of his, much to the Princess of Hell's sadness due to her desiring to see more of her young Cambion's habits and more humans through the screen, but understanding in the end that why the co-owner of her hotel did this. Then, every single resident inside the rehabilitation went on their separate, continuing their usual work while hoping that Izuku passed the test. 1 whole week passed since our young overlord had taken the entrance exam, and during that 1 week, the word nervous to describe his emotional state at the time would be an understatement. He experienced constant anxiety during that time, which was thanks to the fact that he was still not sure if he had passed or not. And that nervosity would even increase as the day of the arrival of the result came closer and closer, and he couldn't even visit his demonic relatives, friends, and teacher on the weekend due to his needing to study a lot for his tests. But slowly and surely, the day arrived, meaning that he could get the results at any time of the day. On the night of that day, inside the apartment where Izuku and his mother lived, our protagonist was sitting at the table in the kitchen living room and was eating his dinner, which consisted of some fried fish and a bowl of rice, with his mother having the same dish and occupying a seat in front of him at the other side of the table, and with his shadowy companion levitating next to him. As he observed the fish he held with the chopsticks in his right hand, without his knowledge, he smiled and zoned out, making his mother worried. Izuku? Inko said. Izuku? Izuku? She repeated with motherly worry, causing her son to get out of his trance and look at her. Are you all right? You've been smiling and staring for a while now. Yes, Mom, I'm fine, Izuku assured, then ate the fish and began to consume that bowl of rice his mother prepared for him, while she and Shadow observed him performing this act, both of them obtaining a worried expression. After he and his mother finished their dinner, her mother took the used bowls and plates, preparing to wash them in the basin, then stepped out of the room and went to the main entrance of the apartment to put a few things into order. All the while Izuku and Shadow approached the sofa in the living room kitchen, with the former descending on it and beginning to read his voodoo that he brought out of his room before dinner, and the latter witnessing his master accomplishing this activity. Despite not being sure about the exam, Izuku knew that he was not allowed to stop studying and improving his abilities. He knew that if he had failed the exam, he wouldn't have lived to the expectations of his demonic relatives, and it would have caused their efforts to turn into nothingness, which made him really upset. But he also knew that he tried his best, and he did what was right. And, although these were kind of positive thoughts, they were still overshadowed by the anxious ideas of him failing not only his demonic family members, but his friends and teacher as well. As he thought about this, his mother suddenly barged through the door and crawled towards him in total panic, making both him and Shadow set their eyes upon him. Izuku, Inko stuttered nervously. The results, they arrived, she announced as she showed off a letter sent by Yua in her left hand. As his mother declared this, for a moment, Izuku just stared at the letter, while his anxiety skyrocketed inside his body, which he attempted not to show to his human parent. Then, he ascended from the sofa, walked up to his mother, and took the letter that contained the result out of her left hand, thanking for her bringing it to him in the process. After that, he began to move in the direction of his room, opening its door and entering it once he reached it, while, as usual, Shadow followed him. Once both he and his shadowy were inside, with the latter closing the door behind his back, Izuku approached his desk, turned the lights up above it, and placed the letter on it, sitting down on his chair and continuing to observe the letter in absolute silence, with the addition of nervousness as well. But despite this anxiousness, he knew that he needed to get through this. So, with newly found determination, he grabbed the letter with both of his hands and unlocked it by ripping it in half, causing a small, circle-shaped device to fall on his desk. The moment the device touched the surface of the furniture, it started to emit light from it, resulting in a holographic screen being projected out of the device, with All Might out of all people being presented on the screen. "I am here as a projection," the number one hero declared as he showed his face on the screen, frightening Izuku and Shadow with his sudden appearance, with the latter even hiding behind the back of his master due to the scare he had just experienced. "All Might?" Izuku questioned in utter disbelief. "Hello, young Midoriya," All Might greeted with his causal booming voice. "Apologies for how long this took. You know, we heroes are busy with two things, paperwork and fighting crime," he explained, then went on with his speech. "I must say, you have quite improved your abilities since we spoke, and," he remarked, referring to the time they met 10 months ago, but he was interrupted by the man behind the camera whispering and signaling him to stop this and get to the main point. "All right, okay," the symbol of peace said, going along the request of the cameraman, who formed a hand signal which indicated that he was okay with this. "You scored near the top on your written exam, and you earned 26 combat in the practical exam," he stated as hope began to morph inside Izuku. "But wait, there's more," All Might declared. "During the practical exam, you have saved a student, and how could a hero course reject the ones who put their lives on the line to save others," he said, then continued. "And because of your selfless act, you have gained 60 rescue points, which means you finished the practical exam with 86 points, taking the number one place in the exam," he announced, shocking our young Cambion with this statement. "In other words, you have passed the entrance exam with flying colors," the number one hero revealed, shocking Izuku down to his very core. He couldn't believe it. He, Izukumidoriya, the boy whom, aside from his mother, role model, demonic relatives, demonic friends, and demonic teacher, no one believed in, had passed the entrance exam with excellent results and got enrolled into Japan's number one ranked hero school. The hero high school he dreamed of learning in for a long time. Because of this, and knowing that he didn't fail his demonic family members, big tears of relief and happiness began to form in his eyes, rolling down on his cheeks once they were large enough as he witnessed the projection. "Congratulations, young Midoriya," All Might congratulated with his iconic smile. "I welcome you at your hero academia," he announced as Izuku went on just observing the screen and crying in joyfulness, still not being able to process what had just happened and wiping his tears away after a few seconds. Then, after he calmed down, with a bright smile on his face, He went out of his room and presented this to his mother, who had been walking up and down in worry and anxiety, but becoming extremely proud and happy for her son once she heard the results, even embracing him with a motherly hug, which our dear hero returned, with Shadow even joining to them by gently wrapping his body around them. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, in the realm of suffering, Alastor was in his hotel room, sitting in his armchair, and was observing the whole scene, both the results of the entrance exam his son took and the wholesome act between him and his mother. With the help of his special radio he and the others used 1 week earlier to watch Izuku go through the test, all the while having his well-known wide grin and witnessing his son with fatherly pride, being proud of his son for his accomplishment. As he watched the screen projected by his special radio, which was on the shelf of the fireplace that he had in his room, grabbed his telephone, which looked like an old Model 202, which he owned to make it easier for anyone he knew to reach him, next to him, and began to dial in the number of one of his old friends, planning to tell her and another old friend of his the success of his only child before announcing it to the others. As usual, the rest of the week passed by relatively fast, getting nearer and nearer to the weekend. Once it arrived, on a clear, sunny Saturday morning, Izuku woke up from his sleep, got out of his bed, and performed his usual morning routines, like eating his breakfast that his mother prepared for him, taking a morning shower, brushing his teeth, the usual stuff. Then, he put the piece of clothes which he got as a present from his father 10 years ago on his body, although it was in a size that matched his current posture, grabbed his voodoo book, chanted the words he needed to unlock a portal between Earth and Hell, opened the portal, and with excitement inside his body, which he felt mainly due to him not being able to wait for announcing his accomplishment to his demonic relatives, friends, and teacher any longer, and with Shadow by his side, who changed back into his shadow form, Izuku moved forward and stepped into the portal, disappearing from sight. At the other side of the portal, in the lobby area of the Hazbin Hotel, our young Cambion exited the gate between the realm of suffering and the realm of mortals, not noticing that the room was in complete darkness. But soon, that was about to change. When Izuku got out of the portal fully, with it closing and vanishing behind his back, in a matter of seconds, the lights suddenly turned on, emitting all parts of the room with their light. Surprise! Every single resident of the hotel exclaimed, causing our protagonist to lift his head from the dark red-colored floor he was observing in surprise, and to set his eyes upon the demons who shouted this. When he did this, he saw that every member of the main cast, with the addition of the pets of the hotel and 2 minions of the notable kingpin, was inside the room, each of them having their own smiles, including Husk as well, although he had only a small one, and were standing under a banner that said congratulations with colorful letters. Meanwhile, the lobby was decorated with colorful balloons that were floating at the walls. Congratulations, Izuku. Wah. Izuku started in absolute shock as Shadow came out of his hideout and positioned himself at his master's left side, trying to gather all his thoughts from what he witnessed. Guys, what is this? Well, after we saw you take the exam, and after your dad told us you passed, we decided to make a congratulation party for you, Charlie explained as she and the rest of the main gang approached our young overlord, with Kiki even floating to him and landing on his left shoulder, nuzzling to his face and purring in joy, which Izuku appreciated. Wait, you saw everything? Izuku quizzed in total shock as the one-eyed demonic cat continued to purr and snuggle to his head, completely taken aback by his royal friend's statement. Indeed we did, my dear boy, the radio demon stated as he got next to his son, making both Izuku and Kiki, and I have to say, you did quite an excellent job. I knew you would pass without a hitch since the beginning, he remarked, placing his left on his son's right shoulder. I'm proud of you, my boy, he expressed with fatherly pride as he observed his son with his eyes, surprising him with his remark. Dad. Our dear hero began as small droplets of delight started to form in the corner of his eyes. Stop with the tears, kid, the alcohol-loving cat sinner noted grumpily, saying it in a manner he didn't intend to hurt his nephew, with him understanding it. Ya don't need to cry just because we're proud of ya, he said as Izuku cleaned his tears away with his right hand, making his father remove his hand from his shoulder. Your uncle is right, my pupil, Sirpentious declared, causing everyone to place their visions on him. We are proud of your glorious accomplishment, he said, then continued. In fact, for your success, I have prepared something special for you. the wannabe overlord stated with a smile, confusing everyone with the sentence he had just said. Then, the notable kingpin snapped with his fingers, signaling his eggy helpers to do what he ordered them to do before the party. Hearing the snap, the two egg boys turned around and rushed to the parlor / the resting part of the lobby, picking up a charcoal gray-colored present box, which was ornamented with a yellow ribbon, and started their journey back to their boss, ticking him off with their slowness. "Move your feet, you walking omelets in waiting," Sirpentious demanded from his two minions. "There is something important in it that I must give to my pupil." "Here's the box, boss," the egg boy labeled as number 22 said as he and the other egg boy got to the wannabe overlord, extending his hands and offering the gift box to him. After his minions arrived next to him, the snake-based demon grabbed the present box and took it out the egg boy's hands, extending his hands in the direction of his and only pupil, allowing him a chance to obtain it. "Here it is, my pupil, take it," the notable kingpin offered, requesting his student to get his hands on the gift, which was the exact thing he did, grabbing it with both of his hands. "I hope you will like it," Sirpentious wished, smiling with pride in the process. After Izuku had the present in his hands, he began to unwrap the yellow-colored ribbon while his demonic family members, friends, teacher, and the pets of the hotel witnessed him in this act, with his inventor-teacher performing this act with hope and with the smile he morphed previously, waiting for him to unlock the present. Once the ribbon was untied, Izuku touched the top of the box with his right hand and lifted it, removing it from the present and allowing him, his father, his shadowy helper, and the pet on his shoulder to earn a look at the objects inside. And when they did this, they were taken aback in surprise, especially Izuku, by what they saw. Inside the box, a hat was positioned, having the perfect size to allow our protagonist to wear it without his antlers piercing through its top. The hat possessed a light green coloration, with its band being white-colored, matching the colors of our dear hero's attire. Seeing that the present he received from his teacher was a hat, Izuku dropped the top of the box on the floor and reached into the box with his right hand, pulling the hat out of it and observing it with his eyes, handing the box to Shadow, who took it away and held it with both of his pitch-black hands, revealing it to the others, surprising and shocking them with it as well. But the most shocking phenomenon was about to come. As Izuku witnessed the hat and its front side in silence, in the middle of the front, a single eye with a red sclere and narrow pupil opened out of nowhere, looking at our young Cambion right in the eye with a joyful expression, judged by the shape of its eye, freaking him out in an instant. "Eep!" Izuku screamed in fright, causing him to drop the hat immediately. Then, after he calmed down, he moved his hands downwards and grabbed the hat with both of his hands, picking it up from the floor and witnessing it, with the hat also looking at him with its eye. "What the?" he quizzed in confusion. "Since you had not possessed any kind of hats, and as I see it, a true gentleman must wear one, I decided that I shall gift you one," the notable kingpin explained as Izuku and everyone else set their eyes upon him. "So, what do you think of it, my pupil? I made it myself to match your attire, and to make us a bit more identical as well," he stated, hoping for that his one and only student liked the gift. Hearing his explanation, Izuku couldn't help but smile at his inventor-teacher's selfless act, knowing that he was not only a kind person deep inside, but with this act, he also proved that he was among the ones who definitely deserved a second chance and could be redeemed, thus ensuring Izuku that he was able to save him from a death caused by the exterminators. As this thought ran through his mind, our young overlord focused his attention on the hat, continuing to smile at it in joy and gratefulness, opening his mouth and beginning to speak. "It's perfect," Izuku remarked as he raised his arms and positioned his newly obtained sentient hat on the top of his head, placing it on the location where it should be. "Thank you, sensei," he remercied as he witnessed the hat smilingly, with it returning the expression by morphing its eye into a form that showed happiness. "Do not mention, my pupil, I'm just that Kai," the wannabe overlord remarked, but stopped in his sentence before he could finish it after he realized how Izuku called him. Did you call me sensei?" he questioned in disbelief, not noticing that tears of joy started to form in the corner of his eyes. Boss? Are you all right?" The other egg boy named number 56 wondered in worry. "Is Sirpentious crying?" Vaggie queried in a mixture of confusion and shock. "I think he is," the Princess of Hell affirmed, strengthening her girlfriend's belief. being in shock as well from the kind act the snake-like sinner performed. "What?" Sirpentious inquired, realizing that he was indeed crying. "No, I'm not," he denied as he turned his away from the group, not wanting them to see the great Sirpentious in this state. "Oh tilde, someone's got emotional tilde," Angel teased, angering the notable kingpin with his remark. "Shut your mouth, spider boy," Sirpentious demanded with frustration as he covered his eyes with his right arm, still a little bit crying in joy from how Izuku called him. "There's just some dust in my eyes," he clarified as the two egg boys brought a tissue box for him to clean his eyes and blow his nose if he needed. "Sure tilde," the gay porn star said in a teasing manner as the wannabe overlord grabbed a tissue from the box his minions were offering him to use. "There's something else in the box under the hat, my pupil," the notable kingpin stated as he wiped his tears away with the tissue, surprising his pupil with this remark of his, causing him to move his head towards the box his shadowy companion was holding and to look inside it, checking if the words that came out from his teacher's mouth was true. And indeed they were. At the bottom of the box, a ray gun the size of a pistol was positioned, sporting purple and yellow color schemes, being mostly yellow at the part where the laser would come out, at the grip, at the back of the gun, and at a kind of circle-shaped part which stored the energy that the weapon could shoot and had a narrow vertical line on it, symbolizing an eye. "A ray gun?" our protagonist quizzed in confusion as he grabbed the weapon with his right hand, got it out of the box, and observed it. Meanwhile, his inventor-teacher gained back his original behavior and morphed the same prideful grin from moments ago on his face. "I have created that magnificent weapon to make it easier for you to get that spiky-haired, uneducated hooligan annihilated," Sirpentious announced with pride and with hatred towards Bakugou, frightening his student with his statement. "No, I can't do that," our dear hero declared in worry and panic, which went completely ignored by the wannabe overlord. However, this worry and panic quickly turned into shock once he had a realization after he processed what Sirpentious had actually said. "Wait, if you know about Bakugou, does that mean?" "Yeah, we saw him, and how he talked to you, too," Charlie revealed, confirming what her young Cambion thought, "and I get it, Izuku. I know how it feels to be talked down by others," she expressed with sadness and crossed arms, remembering back to the rude remarks of the sinners who didn't believe in her cause. "Charlie." Izuku started with concern, worrying about the mental state of his friend, with Vaggie sharing the same emotion as well. "But look at the bright side," Princess Charlotte stated, going back to her original, cheerful herself. "You have passed the exam and you even surpassed Bakugou in the practical exam. You should be proud," she beamed with a smile. I know, but I just got lucky," Izuku remarked, scratching the back of his head with his left hand in shyness. "I don't deserve any praise." "Aw, come on, darling, do not say such a thing," a demon declared from the entrance of the hotel, causing everyone to move their heads in the direction the sound came from, with Izuku performing this activity in surprise, his father doing this in delight, both of them instantly recognizing the voice, already knowing the demon who spoke. And when they turned their heads, their assumptions came to reality. In front of their eyes, the female overlord and the leader of the cannibal colony, Rosie, was foundable, wearing her usual clothing and approaching the group. And surprisingly, she was not alone. Next to her, the club owner, singer, and actress in Mortal Life Mimsy was standing, acquiring her causal attire that consisted of a 1920s style flapper dress in magenta shades and with teeth markings, a dark pink headband decorated with 2 large dark pink feathers, black-heeled shoes, dark pink opera gloves, white stockings, and a black pearl necklace that featured a pink gem in the middle. As Izuku and the others witnessed 2 female demons, Rosie continued her speech, walking towards our group in the process. "You deserve to be praised," the leader of the cannibal colony remarked with a smile on her face as she and Mimsy reached the group. "Miss Rosie, Miss Mimsy," Izuku greeted gleefully as he placed the ray gun back inside the present box Shadow was holding and Kiki jumped off of his shoulder, positioning herself next to Fat Nuggets, who was standing next to his owner. "Ah, come on, sweetie, we've known for a long time now," Mimsy said joyfully, delighted to see our dear hero. "You don't need to call me like that," she stated, referring to Izuku calling her miss. "What are you doing here?" Izuku wondered smilingly. "Well, 5 days earlier, your dear father let us know about your success and invited us to this little congratulation party," And since we had not seen you for a while now, we decided to pay you a visit and see the young man you have become. The female overlord explained, surprising Izuku with her explanation. And what a fine young man you have become, sweetie, the club owner noted, then went on with her speech. You will find a beautiful young lady for yourself in your school in no time, she declared, causing our young overlord to lower his ears a tiny bit and make his cheeks heat up from her remark. Miss Mimsy, Izuku stuttered as the blush on his face fully manifested. I couldn't say it better, my darling Mimsy, Rosie remarked, joining Mimsy's teasing, resulting in our protagonist's face becoming as red as a tomato. All the while the residents of the hotel, with the exception of our dear hero's father, aunt, uncle, and royal friend, who had knowledge of her friend's relationship with Rosie due to him telling her during that talk, witnessed the whole scene with confusion, surprised by the fact that Izuku personally knew another overlord. Fortunately for him, this teasing wouldn't last long, which was thanks to his demonic parent unlocking his mouth and beginning to speak. As much as I enjoy watching this, I suppose we shouldn't make my dear boy too embarrassed, my dears, the deer-based overlord said jokingly, then continued. After all, we still have a party to attend to celebrate his success, he pointed out. As you wish, Alastor, Rosie replied, with both her and Mimsy ending their teasing, allowing our dear hero to lose his blush and calm himself down, straightening his ears. Now, let us settle down and begin our celebration, the radio demon announced. Then he turned his body and walked back to the resting part of the lobby area of the Hazbin Hotel, with everyone in the room following him, including Shadow, who joined them after he put the box he had in his hands down. And thus, the congratulation had begun, with everyone enjoying it, talking and chatting with each other, and tasting and eating from the delicious hellfire muffins Niffty prepared for the party. During the party, Izuku introduced Charlie to Rosie and Mimsy and explained her cause and the role of the hotel in it, both of the female demons earning interest in it and supporting it, with Rosie even revealing at the end that she had already heard about the hotel through the radio show about it and wanted to check it out personally, surprising the Princess of Hell with this, but becoming her extremely happy anyway for getting the support of 2 more demons, with one of them being another overlord. And as everyone enjoyed, Izuku, although not having a knowledge of the future, knew one thing for certain. No matter what the situation was going to be or what he had done, he would always have the support of demonic loved ones. And with this thought in his mind, he was 100% ready to begin his studies at UA, not knowing that it would change his life forever. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 7. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author MaxX69 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.